Okay, this is OK here, and we're going to do a beginner stream today, introducing some basic themes in Crazyhouse. And the reason for doing this is because the Crazyhouse League Season 5, which is a team league, is just starting up. And it ranges from the very best players in the world, like Schwarnet and Rapid Variants, in teams of 7, all the way down to some beginning Crazyhouse players. And there are 6 teams of 7 players. So I am myself actually in this team 5, which hasn't got a creative name yet. I see the Legionnaires, led by Legion Destroyer. Team 4 led by Variants only. And the finisher in the Inglorious Forkers. And Cirque du Sacré led by Schwarnet, and Team 3 led by Rapid Variants. So you can see we have about 50 people signed up, so 42 players playing each week a game of slow Crazyhouse, in fact 2 games of slow Crazyhouse with their assigned opponent. And then there are some alts who need substitute in if people aren't available. So I have my team I've got as my teammates, Gene Simmons on board 1, Rohan Gupta 4398 board 3, Fahavu, OJB, Colwem, and Mohar 369. Also worth pointing out on the finishers team on board 3 is Pepelu, who's the chess streamer. He streams all his Crazyhouse matches. So I thought I should do something to help beginning Crazyhouse players get better quickly. There is already stuff on my blog, which you might enjoy, zhchess.blogspot.com. Lots of links to other places where you can find stuff. But this is just, so I'm going to be creating the study as we go along with instructive positions based on something else happening at the moment, which is the 1+0 Crazyhouse World Championship. This is now at the candidates phase, so it's the last 8 who will all play each other. And on the blog you can see a calendar of upcoming matches. And they'll be streamed by Jan Lee, by the ZH Bras on Twitch, by Clearcast Chess on Twitch. So lots of exciting stuff happening in the world of Crazyhouse. Okay, so so let's begin. So this is the position. Actually, I was black and Le Professionnel was white, and of course I'm totally losing because I've grabbed a queen, but I've left a G7 weakness, and my king. So of course he drops the pawn on the 7th. The king can't run this way, so has to run here. He picks up the rook with check, forcing takes. He also has he needs a pawn or a bishop in hand to complete this operation. And then at this point he would need a knight or a rook, but he's just taken a rook in the corner. So that's checkmate. Okay, so it's a very basic checkmate, and in order for it to work, all he needed was a second pawn, a second diagonal piece. So this check, and the second diagonal piece is to place here on G7. Okay, so that's a basic theme in Crazyhouse. You have to really watch out not to allow forks on the 7th rank, because you'll likely lose the game. So that was that. Okay, so I'm going to be the first 3 I've added already. The rest I'll be adding as we go along. The second one is also a kind of back rank issue. So I wonder if I should encourage chat to have a think about it for a moment. Just to check. Yeah. So I'm on the Lichess homepage. And again, Le Professionnel as black finished me off in this position. Can anyone in chat see how he did it? So this knight is not protected. Okay, so it's actually quite straightforward. Takes, takes. Okay, and now he has a knight, a queen, a bishop. Okay, so it's not as straightforward as I thought. So there's knight here, check, and if I run here or here, queen at g1 is checkmate. But I could run towards the knight. So how to finish it off? Because now if I now put the queen on g1, the king might be able to escape. So it wasn't quite as straightforward as I thought, but it is still fairly straightforward. The knight seals off the king from ever running back, and so it's actually a kind of smothered mate that exists in this position. Okay, and then I have a third example of a back rank, and this was delivered by Penguin GM against King Switcher. The rook is hanging on the back rank, so it's very natural to take it. White can block with a bishop or a knight, but now black has a rook in hand and can just sacrifice his queen. White is forced to take, and the rook at g1 is checkmate. Okay, so that's another example of back rank. So I'm going to start adding some new studies, and they will be fairly basic. And so this one is going to be a smothered mate between Jan Lee and the lazy MD. Is it lazy MD? I can't remember how he capitalizes it. So let's see. So Jan, I should have said it the other way around, so I'm a little bit. It was the lazy MD versus Jan Lee rather than. Okay, so Jan Lee was black. Can we see a smother? So the king can't run out here because the knight covers this square. And the key thing is that this square is not protected. So if we can smother the king, and indeed that's what he did, then white can block with any piece, and knight here is then checkmate. Because this was actually a kind of smother, I'm just going to put that as chapter 3, so that there's a nice progression of ideas. Okay, so that's a simple smother idea. So the next one is actually going to be another smother by Penguin. So let's just add it in. Smothered mate okay, and this time it's white to play. So this one, we don't have a knight in hand. Knight f6 is not checkmate because the bishop covers. If we could put a knight on e7, it would be checkmate. So can we, but we can actually pick up a knight here. And the king can't take back because it's protected. So rook takes knight, rook is forced to take back, and then knight here is a smothered mate. So it's another simple example of a smother. Okay, now the next example will be the classic example of the smothered mate. And it was an unfortunate one for Kyle Legion, who had taken a bit of a break from Crazyhouse, and so let's see. And so he kind of didn't come to the match warmed up. So he lost the first few games of his match in the Bullet Crazyhouse World Championship, and then came back and won a lot of the remaining games, but it was a little bit too late. And this is a very classic smothered mate. Really important that beginning players are really aware of this mate. So is there anyone in chat who would like to suggest where the mate is. We have 2 pawns, a knight, a bishop, and a rook in hand. Okay, well we'll keep ploughing on, but do suggest things in chat so I know that people are engaged. Hi there, OJ. Knight at h6, and hi there, Resai 8000. Yes, now this is a really classic smothered mate. Now I'm afraid I'm starting quite easy, but still I think it's instructive to begin with the basics. Yeah, knight at h6, very nice, because if the pawn takes the knight, rook at h8 is checkmate. So because of this bishop on the long diagonal. So this is something you really have to watch out for. The bishop on the long diagonal, which will control h8 if the g7 square is cleared. So this is actually an example of a clearance mate, as well as a smothered mate. And if the king just steps aside, then we get the smother, takes. So actually it's worth thinking, what ingredients do we need for this mate to work? So we needed control on the long diagonal, but we also needed this g8 square to be protected only by a rook, which was guarding f7. So it's actually also an example of deflecting a defender. So this is why it's quite beautiful, this example. It's an example of clearance, an example of deflecting a defender. Now if black had, for example, a knight defending g8, then this mate would no longer work because the knight could take. Then white would need, for example, another knight attacking this in order to go knight takes pawn, rook takes, knight takes, smothered mate. So if there were a knight here protecting g8, this mate wouldn't work. Another way it wouldn't work is if there's any piece protecting this square. So both these squares need to be unprotected in order for this mate to work. This can be instructive because in some positions you might be able to throw in a check with the bishop, for example, which also defends f7, as a way of protecting against this mate. So, okay, this is a nice example of smothered mate. Okay, now we're going to go to another very important example that everyone should know, and it's called, I'll call it the 2 knights smother. And this came up in a game between Blitz Bullet and Antic. Okay, now the 2 knights smother, we begin in the same way. And as before, because neither of these 2 squares are protected, if the king slides over, we've got our smothered mate. Queen at g8, rook takes, and knight takes f7 checkmate. Worth noting, by the way, if it's not a rook but a queen on the back rank, then queen takes g8 would guard f7. So smothered this smothered mate only works because there's a rook guarding g8, and because these 2 squares are unprotected apart from that. Okay, now the 2 knight smother works as follows. Because of the normal smothered mate, he has to take. And this creates a weakness on f6 and on g7. And there are 2 ways that can normally be exploited. One would be by a rook at h8 or at g7. So rook at h8 followed by drawing the king out along diagonals with pawns. So just drawing the king out. And the other way is with the knight. If you have a second knight, and that way, even if the king goes into the corner, we can draw the king out with a pawn. So we'll come back, draw the king out, and then swing back like this. Now, these pawns keep the king very much shouldered in here. These pawns keep the king shouldered in here. Now, if you also have a queen, and it goes back, the threat is queen at g7 checkmate. So that's quite a serious threat. If the king steps back, that will be checkmate, so the king has to step forwards. And then what we can do, so then we have to judge, is queen f3 best or queen at g7? If queen at g7, notice that's going to cover this. This works in this case, because if king takes knight, bishop here is checkmate, and if king here, bishop here is checkmate. So notice how the queen and bishop, the two diagonal pieces, cover a whole square. This is a very important thing to recognize. Oh, hi there, Chuck Moulton, and thanks for the tier 1 subscription. That's very kind of you. And 6 months in a row. That's very nice. And I mean, thanks for watching even more than thank you for subscribing. Thanks for supporting. So queen. So yeah, so this is a very nice pattern. So let's just go back. What are the ingredients that made it work? 2 knights were key, but also the pawn for g7, and finally the queen. So whenever your opponent has 2 knights and some diagonal piece and a queen, you must be especially alert that you guard f7 or g8, or probably that you guard f6 and h6. And the thing is, even if you guard f6, sometimes the opponent could use the e7 square or the g7 square. So really h6 or g8 or f7, those are really the squares you need to guard. Or g7. Yeah, g7, so there's no pawn drop on g7. So you can't just go on a wild attack on the opponent king. See, you can see here black was hoping for mate in 1 with rook at h1, but he's left himself exposed at the back to this very important mating idea. And as a beginner, you can pick up a lot of wins if you know these ideas and your opponent doesn't. So that's that one. Okay. And next one is going to be drawing out the king. It was another unfortunate game for Kyle Legion, who is, I think it's fair to say, is a much stronger player than Swift Devil, but was not in his prime form. So drawing out the king. So this is an example where you can see perhaps there's been some knight at f3 check, and that knight has been taken. And there's a weakness on g2. So how are we going to draw out the king? We have a knight, 3 bishops, and 2 queens in hand. We might not even need all those pieces. And the one piece that's really going to draw out the king in such a position is obviously the knight and also a pawn. So if the king comes up immediately, we've succeeded in drawing it out. So king will try to stay in the corner, but then we draw it out. King takes bishop. Okay, now let's think what we want to do next. We probably want to just swing the knight back, like so. So if the king goes back, he's just going to get mated on g2. So he's likely to step forward. Now this is actually quite an instructive position. Ryusai says, yeah, queen at g2. This is actually a very instructive position. So queen at g2 does actually work in this position. King takes knight. So let's see. Queen at g2, king takes knight, and bishop here is actually checkmate. But it's worth knowing there's probably a better way to mate. I wonder if anyone in chat can see. I'm not saying it is a fine way to mate, but notice how you are giving the potential for the king to escape. And there's a way of mating in this position which is really keeps the king locked up and penned in. And this is the way to lose completely won games, is if you think you have a mate and you have all these pieces, but somehow the king runs away from all your pieces. So keeping the king within the mating net is very valuable. Now, it turns out queen at g2 is completely fine here because the bishop is a wonderful piece to stop the king from running away. But suppose we only, just for the sake of imagination, we only had a pawn in this position. Then if we added a pawn here, the king runs here, and we had another pawn, the king runs here, and so on. We would be in a little bit of trouble. Suppose we only had a pawn. What would we do next? Anyone in chat see it? So I know this is slight imagination because you see all these juicy pieces. 2 queens and 2 bishops. Okay, I'm going to give 10 seconds. A-Boss says, then we resign. Well, that's no way to... In Crazyhouse, never resign. Because you've always got hope. So, anyone see it? So remember, how are we going to keep this king penned in? Someone? Don't want to have to spoil it for you. I think you can see it. Unfortunately, yeah, thanks for the challenge ahead OTG, but I'm doing an instructive stream right now where I'm just going through some positions from the Bullet Crazyhouse World Championship. King e7, A-Boss is trolling me. Okay, so the way to keep it in is to protect the knight with check. Oh, knight e7. Oh, so you meant knight e2 or something. Yeah, queen g5, Resai's got it. And however black defends, if you had a pawn, now that's checkmate. Because the 2 escape squares are all covered. So in this case, bishop here is checkmate. And that indeed was how Swift Devil finished that game. So I think that's a very instructive, even though it's very basic, I think it's very instructive. So it's how to draw the king out. So you first use the knight and then use the bishop to draw it out. And this would work, but even better, so I'll promote this variation, is to keep the king penned in. Now this is a very nice pattern. So does queen at g2 work in the initial position? Yes, you're right, it does. So queen at g2 works in the initial position just because we have so many pieces. So we have a second queen. And Abel says, you didn't say we had a queen. Suppose we only have a pawn. Yeah, the whole point of the mate I was showing you is suppose we only have a queen and a pawn. Yeah. So we don't have those bishops. So yeah, does queen at g2 work in the initial position? It does because we have a second queen. So we could, for example, we could do exactly the same mate, basically, with our second queen. So king comes out here, queen here, he blocks. And if we only had a pawn, even a pawn would work. So my point with the pawn thing is, yeah, so queen at g2 works here, but we need a bishop because it stops the king running away. So this is actually quite a nice, quite a nice picture actually, because so that one way of getting the king is by keeping it in a mating net, and the other way is by having pieces that hit the king along its escape path. And I don't think I've got other positions. I don't necessarily have other positions sort of illustrating that concept. So I think this is a good picture to keep in mind. If the king is running in a certain direction, you want to hit the king in that direction to stop it running in that direction. Okay, but for a beginner concept, drawing out the king is a very important concept, and keeping the king in a mating net, stopping it from running away, is another very important concept. So sealing the king in, as I say. So I think that's two instructive concepts in one position. So the next one is going to be from Jan Lee against the Lazy MD. I think it's the Lazy MD against Jan Lee though. So I better be right because I'll have to change it. And the concept here is that the king is more important than the queen. So this is actually This example actually Jan didn't, I mean, it was completely winning what he played, but he didn't play the most accurate moves. Obviously this is bullet. So of course Jan played knight takes f3 check. If the king, so if the king steps into the corner, queen here is checkmate. And in fact what happened in the game was the king stepped into the corner. I think he was probably expecting the king to step to g2, and so Jan probably pre-moved knight takes queen. So missed the mate in one, but obviously black is completely safe. So king g2 obviously avoids the mate in one, and knight takes queen is still very tempting. You're winning the queen with check, and so for sure you're going to be mating. So winning the queen with check is always a good thing to do, and you're keeping the king, you're sealing the king in with such a move, because the king can't run up to either of these two squares. So how would we finish off this position? Let me think. So the king has to go here or here or here. So suppose it goes. Now the thing is, if it goes to either of those two squares, then a knight check can come in, and then the queen can land on h2 again. So suppose it goes to this square. Now actually this is one of those examples where black now has two queens in hand, so he can force the king onto one of those nasty squares and get a checkmate. So you could win the queen with check and get a very nice checkmate. That's perfectly fine. But there's actually a quicker mate, which is queen h2 directly, I think. King takes knight. Now let's me think. I thought I was going to go knight here, cutting off the king from running away, but then it's got, yeah, that works. So knight here, notice how that, so this is another good example of cutting off the king from running away. So you're cutting off these two squares from the king, so the king has to step here, and finally you mate, like so. So I'm going to make that the main line. So knight f3 check. So the point of this is you could take the queen, and you're taking the queen with check, so that's actually a perfectly good thing to do. But I wanted to show this mate where you're saying, actually, I'm more interested in the king. I'm more interested in the king than in the queen. But having said that, there is also this checkmate if you did take the queen, because you'd have two queens in hand. Okay, so that was quite nice. And that leads us on to the next theme, which is winning the queen with check. If you win the queen with check, you keep a lot of initiative, so it's often a very good thing, and it's often the end of the game. So this is Kyle Legion bouncing back against Swift Devil in round 1 of the Crazyhouse World Championship. Is this correct? Yeah, we should be looking from white's perspective. Okay, so yeah, and so he actually found a slightly different mate from this position, but yeah, there's only one obvious check, which is rook here check, king here, and then we don't want to go pawn takes pawn because then the rook would no longer be protected, so we take with the queen. So now we're winning the queen with check, and that's very promising. And if the king were to step to here, queen here is check, not queen there, queen there is checkmate. So the king better take the rook. So this is very promising because we've got a queen with check. So how to finish it off? So in these sorts of situations where you're trying to finish off the king, it's probably a good idea to look at the king's escape squares. Because one of the escape squares is here, I'm very tempted to put a king here because that forces the king to come here. And then looking a little bit more carefully, it also cuts off this file, and so it leaves the king actually only one square, which you can then seal off with a pawn. and this is checkmate. So that's the way. So it might be tempting after here, for example, to promote another queen and so on. But if you recognize that the king is stuck within a wedge and it has no other squares to go to, then this is going to be checkmate. That's another idea. Yeah, so why not under promotion? So this is actually a very nice idea, and we're going to look at the theme of under promotion later in this stream. And this is a nice idea, because if the king were to come here, queen here is checkmate, because the two diagonal pieces, and we saw this in an earlier chapter, they cut off a square, and also the queen cuts off this file. So the king can't step up that way. And it can't step, oh, so it could step here. But then we have another very pretty mate, which is the queen here. So notice, whenever you have the knight and the queen at this sort of distance 3 away from each other, again you have this nice square that they form. So the king can't step up like that. So let's analyze what other squares after d8 equals 9, what other squares could it go to? It could go here or here. It can't go here because just queen there would just be checkmate. So these two squares are still possible. Let's just try and analyze these two. If it were to go here, well, we have a lot of pawns, so I'm thinking already a queen here cuts off the king in a little wedge formation. So I'm afraid of the king running this way. I'm afraid of the king running to that square, so that's why I'm not going to check from here. Another idea is to check on this diagonal, but he can just block it. So we always want to check from right next to the king. So I think check from here is good. No, the bishop actually covers this square. I was thinking king takes knight and pawn here, but oh my god, the bishop and the knight both cover. Okay, so I'm being a little careless. I need a better idea. So king here, what do I do? At this point, yeah, I wanted queen at e6, but now I can't see the finish. Yeah, bishop g5 is good to maybe pick up another piece. Bishop g5, he'll block with the bishop, takes, and that's not making progress. We can never move this knight because it's pinned. So it's quite interesting, the under promotion, but I'm just wondering if I just promote the king e7 line or king here, we can deliver a single check from here or here, but I don't see a way of finishing off the king. So the king seems to have got a degree of safety if it gets to take the knight. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the engine on, and you can see what is the mate. So king e7 is the move. So yeah, so if it goes to e8, there is also a mate with at f7. If he takes here, queen e8 is mate, so king has to go here. Now I'm not looking at it, I'm still thinking what's the way to mate here, because there's a mate in 2. I'm thinking pawn here, and I'm wrong. So pawn here, the king could run up. Okay, so that doesn't quite work. So what is the way? Oh, I know the way. So queen e6, king takes knight. Now I was going to say take this knight and go knight here, checkmate, but there's something faster. I was going to say pawn takes knight, queen, rook takes, and knight here is checkmate. And this is a very nice pattern, by the way. The knight and the queen combine to give this checkmate. But there's something I missed, which is, oh, queen e8 straight away. Okay, that's very pretty. So let's just see that again. If the king tries to go here, you force it to take the knight, and then you have this beautiful mate. But the problem in this initial position is he does have king here. No, in this position he has king here, and then I didn't see a mate. So white, you'd have to go bishop g5, bishop, and I said block with the bishop because if you block with the knight, then the knight could be used to maybe deliver a mate. So and then you're plus 22, but yeah, no clear mate. It's suggesting pawn at f7. So I can say delete from here, king e7, white winning, but no mate. But it was a very interesting suggestion, Risai, because we got to practice a lot of our like mating techniques. We actually saw a lot of nice ideas with stuff like king here, no, king here, queen at g5. That's a really pretty mating idea. So thank you for the suggestion. But as you said, king e7 is a little bit sneaky. So in the original position, yeah, this is the efficient way of getting the job done. Okay. Next one, again, we're going to look at another example of winning the queen with check. And because I'm doing this by theme, they're probably going to get a little bit more difficult as we continue, but only a little bit. Winning queen with check, but this time it's Le Professionnel against myself, and it's black to play. Oh yes, I remember this game. So the king is actually in a mating net. So if I deliver any check, it would be almost checkmate. So I did this, winning the queen with check. And now white has a choice of whether to take the knight or the bishop. You don't want to take neither, because otherwise queen at g2 is just going to mate you. But if you take the bishop, there are probably a million ways to mate, but one of the nice ones is king here and queen here, checkmate. So that's very pretty. But what happened in the game was the other one, king here. And so yeah, can anyone in the chat see how to checkmate this white king? So we've won the queen with check, but now how to finish off the job. And okay, there must be a million mates. So bishop g4 is probably a very nice idea, because the idea is if the king takes on g4, queen at h4 is checkmate, so that's very nice. If the king runs here, queen at e2 is checkmate. You have a second knight, knight at d4 is, yeah, absolutely. So if I did do bishop g4, king here, we said queen there is checkmate. So after bishop g4, he would have to run here, I think. And then it's not, I'm not seeing it. So knight at d4 with queen at e2, absolutely. I think that knight at d4 takes, king here, queen at e2 is checkmate. It's a hook mate. Yeah. But there is a mate in 2. Okay, so the mate I'm not seeing is, so we've got this one. And I've seen if you take, you get mated. If you go here, you get mated. Here, I'm not seeing it. Because, how do I finish off here? I'm not sure. Queen h3 and knight f3. Ah, thank you, Rizai. Yay. So this is another very nice queen and knight mate, and I missed it. So this is good practice. Oh, it was Antic who saw it. Nice. It's because you're the color coded the same as OJ. Queen h3, and Rizai also saw it. You both saw it. Okay, cool. Very pretty. And OJ had a very nice mate as well, which I just said is a hook mate. Takes, king has to go here, and queen here is... But in the game, I actually found a shorter mate. Queen at d... Yes, so the music down has got it. And I'm going to claim queen at d3 is the better mate. Although you've all found very nice mates. But this is very nice because it keeps the king sealed in. And so it's very instructive. Because whatever he does, even if he puts pieces on to defend, now the king is sealed in a mating net. This is also covered. So any check to the king will be mate. So a check from here or from here is going to be checkmate. And so that's what happened in the game. The queen, of course, is pinned, so can't take this knight. So yeah. So I think that was the concept I wanted to illustrate with this. Winning the queen with check, and secondly, another example of sealing the king in. Okay, now we're going to get our last example of winning the queen with check, and this is a bit of a tough one. So hopefully we won't get stuck on it. Clear cast against queen with check, and this is a game between Clear cast and Burp Cow. It was in fact the last game of their series, and it was in a way a little bit sad for Burp Cow because he had a very nice. He had in fact mate in this position. Okay, first I'll show you what happened in the game. So what I meant by very sad. What happened in the game is Burp Cow played pawn takes bishop. So I'd like to say, yeah, in this position black actually has mate and he's completely winning. But he played pawn takes bishop. Clear cast played this, forcing bishop takes queen, pawn takes. And I think so. You either have to take the pawn or you step up. And I'm just trying to think why stepping up doesn't work. Yeah, stepping up doesn't work because I can drop a knight here, king takes, and queen here. And so that happened in a different order. King takes, queen here, check. The knight covers this square, the queen covers this square. King only has one square to go to, which is here, and then knight here is checkmate. So a very beautiful mate found by Clearcast in a game which in fact he was completely losing. But Burp Cow had mate here, and f8 to... Oh, f8, sorry, yeah, thank you. So he has to go, so I should say something like this covers this square and that square is covered. In fact, that is in fact exactly what happened in the game, so I'll promote this, although it'll be demoted later, and that was checkmate. That was in fact how the game ended, with f8. Okay, so the question is, how should Burp Cow have played this position? And yeah, the first move, I think you can guess because we want to win the queen with check. So rook here, check. And okay, and we can guess the next move. If this, we're going to win the queen with check. But let's just check. Let's just check the other move first. So we're going to make that the main line. But what if he goes here? Quite a lot of possibilities. Yeah, so reside 8000, rook f2, indeed. There are in fact several mates here, so what should we do next? I mean, I feel like going knight here. We could even go bishop takes knight, but then we might lose the rook. So we want to keep the king in a box, as it were. So I like knight here because it defends the rook, so it frees up these bishops to maybe take this knight. But also notice how the king is sealed off by the pawn and the bishop. So the king is really sealed up. Am I missing something? This seems too easy. I'm missing the fact that this knight actually stops pawn at c4. Knight d1 maybe, yes, but now how to finish it? I was thinking pawn at c4, I was thinking this is too easy, but actually the knight covers c4. So even nicer, knight here, check. Knight b2, real size got it. Very well done. King here, and then bishop takes knight. So very nice checkmate if he runs that way. So we keep him in the cage, and finally we take the knight with check. So we actually never needed the queen in that situation. But if he runs the other way, we're getting the queen with check. So obviously if he runs, queen here is going to be checkmate. If he blocks, then bishop takes pawn. We're going to have a queen here. So if we could ever get a queen here, notice this bishop and queen will cover off any escape here. So I think this is all going to be straightforward. So if he takes, but let me see. What if he just takes the rook? So I was saying that if white tries to block, then we could just take it. And again, he can't go here because queen here will be checkmate. So he has to take the rook, and then we have just queen here, checkmate. So that seems very straightforward. But so it seems like the only try white has is to take the rook immediately. So I'll make that the main line. So how to find mate here? So I'm not seeing it immediately. So my first thought is I want to keep the king sealed in. So maybe queen here, but then so that's a nice move because it keeps the king sealed in. But the king does always have this square to run to, so that makes me a little bit concerned. Okay, so how to... Rizzo says pawn at g5 maybe. So pawn at g5 is nice, but what's the knockout? We could then bring the knight in, or we could go queen here, but then he comes back, and yeah, we could win the knight with check. So, but there is something very short here, from what I recall. So bishop takes knight even looks very strong. Antic says knight e2. Knight e2. Knight e2. So knight e2 looks interesting because if he runs up, I just simply have queen at g6 checkmate. Yes, knight e2 looks very nice. And if he runs, so it forces him to run this way. But then I have no. So knight e2, if he runs here, I have queen here, checkmate. So what if he runs here? So, oh, I've got the bishops. Bishop takes knight, maybe. Bishop takes knight, and then that's mate next move, I think. And so Antic says queen at f4 check, king here or here forced, and then take them. But if he does this, then then after queen takes knight, he's running this way. So I think that the bishop takes knight is the fastest, because then after here, queen f4 will be, queen f2 will be checkmate. And I think that's everything. Queen here is checkmate. So I think Rosa says, doesn't pawn at g5, king h5, h6 work? Pawn at g5, king, oh no. Pawn at g5 presumably takes. Oh, did I miss something? Oh yes, I see. If queen here, king here. Okay, so this is not right. Unfortunately, king takes knight seems to be unfortunate because he's getting away here. Of course, he's not really getting away because it will be mating. We just remove the bishop and take all the blockers, but that's not going to be the fastest mate. So maybe queen f4 was faster. Okay, let's just try and have a think for a second. 92. So should we cheat and look at the engine at this point? So 92 was correct. King e3. Bishop takes knight is correct. King takes e2. And then the move is quite boring. Just queen at f. Yeah, so we can do what we wanted, but we do need the extra move of pawn at e2. So we were almost there. I just missed pawn at e2 to finish it. Or knight at b2 to finish it, even sweeter. Okay, yeah. Okay, so was that the fastest mate? If we just go back a bit. Rook takes f4 is check. King takes f4 is the best move. Knight e2 is the best move. King e3. Bishop takes knight is the best move. Queen here. And let's promote knight at b2 as checkmate. Okay. So yeah, we got there in the end with a little bit of help on the last move. I missed the mate in 1 after king d1. So you were asking, someone was asking, what about pawn at g5? That's a mate in 4 apparently. King takes pawn at h6, and the idea is if you take here, queen at g6 is checkmate, so you better step back, and then queen at g5, king f3, and then the bishop can come in, and all these diagonals are covered. So that's also a very, very nice mate. Okay, so yeah, I did fear we would get a little bit stuck on that one because it was a slightly more tricky one. But the theme again was taking the queen with check, so that's a nice one. If you can take the queen with check, you really have a lot of initiative in your attack. So we move on to another theme, and so we're going to have another fairly basic puzzle, and there should be a lot more of these, but I've only got one of this theme, and it's again one of my losses. And it was black to play, and this is actually quite an easy one, and the theme is the discovered check, and also the double check. So it's even the double check. So no prizes for guessing the move. And the power of the double check, as everyone knows, is because the king is being attacked from 2 directions, it's impossible to block. This is especially powerful in Crazyhouse because in Crazyhouse you have all these blockers in hand. So a double check really forces the king to move. And the king here has only 1 square. And so it's a very easy now, checkmate. Actually, h2 is covered, but h1 is checkmate. Okay, we now move to actually a really common theme in Crazyhouse, which is coordination of the knight and queen. We've seen already in the examples we've done so far, lots of examples of knight and queen coordination. So, but we're going to start again from the basics. And actually this was the other way around. I think this was a mate found by King Switcher against Bonobo. But I think it's a very instructive one. So again, we've seen sealing the king in, so this is another example of sealing the king in. If we check the king, I mean, there are lots of mates in this position. I should turn the engine off. There are lots of mates in this position, but if we can seal the king in and keep our knight alive, that's clearly a good thing. So queen here is a very natural move. I just realized white does have this. So originally I was thinking block and then pawn here will be checkmate. But white does have this move, giving the king an escape square. And then queen takes bishop is checkmate. Okay. So that doesn't work. So if you do this, and this is checkmate because the knight covers the king's only escape square. But yeah, interesting to point out that king could try and get an escape square by moving the bishop, but then queen takes bishop is checkmate in here. So that wouldn't always be true. So this is actually quite interesting how sometimes, that's a good example by the way, how sometimes it's a good idea to move a piece on the board. So usually when you're defending, you always want to use pieces in hand to block. But sometimes you actually want, because that way your pieces reinforce each other. So this bishop is, you can't just take this bishop and so on. And it's an opportunity of getting your pieces in hand onto the board. So even when you're defending, you really want to use your pieces in hand. But in certain rare circumstances, you would rather move pieces in order to give your king squares to go to. But yeah, in this case, bishop here doesn't work. It gives you a square, but no good. Okay, so that was quite a basic example of knight and queen, and I think we're going to have some more basic examples, but they'll get progressively more interesting. And this was going to be a game between Chicken Crossroad and Fumi. And they had a pretty epic series, but Chicken was too strong. And so Chicken is in the candidates. So we have a queen and a knight. So this is the sort of example where there are actually loads of ways to mate. So if you'd like to, so Moha, thanks for the challenge, but I can't take challenges right now because I am doing an Instructive Crazyhouse stream. So I'm gonna let the viewers come up with suggestions for how to mate in this position, and I'll try and think again how to mate. But there are lots of ways of mating, so this is not about finding the unique solution. So when you're trying to mate the king, first it's quite a good idea to try and look at how the king is cut off. And you see these two squares are cut off, so the king is restricted, and this square is also cut off, is restricted to this area of the board. Not quite in a mating net. So the most obvious thing is, since you have a queen in hand, is a queen here or a queen here with check. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Actually, something else which also comes to mind is queen here. We've seen the way of blocking off the king like this. This doesn't work because the bishop actually does provide some protection for the king. So any mate we have to find has to dodge this diagonal. So Ryusai has a suggestion: Queen f6, King h5 forced. I'm just reading this. Queen h4, King to g6, and Pawn h5. Now you have to watch out because there's actually some more protection. The knight is covering h5. So yeah, you're almost there. So let's try. Well, I'm not going to play it on the board. I'm going to try and visualize this. Let's try and work it out. Queen f6, that's nice. King h5, Queen h4, that's good. King back, almost there. No, it's a very good idea. So Queen h6, King here. The problem is we're worried about. We could just go knight here, but then the king would run here. We're very close. Let's see if anyone else has any ideas. Or Ryusai maybe can find a way of fixing his solution. Queen at g7 looks good too. Yep. So I mean, it's no secret that anything wins here. So the thing is finding the line. Antic sees it. Yeah, you can give your line Antic because there are many solutions. So everyone can come up with their own way of doing it. So we have to watch out for this, for actually this bishop as well. Yeah. So it's not. It's actually, that's the thing, I didn't even notice that bishop when I first saw the position. Bishop's moving backwards. And this is the power of the bishop. Although the knight is a very powerful piece because you can't block its checks, the bishop is great because it's a great piece, as we'll see later on, for both attacking and defending. And Chess is the Best Game says, I want to start with pawn at f5. You could then pick up a bishop. So takes. So takes. Bishop here, king here. Yeah, I mean it's going to, anything will work here. So you need a line to complete it. Queen f6, king h5, knight d7, king d4, queen h4. Okay, Ryusai, you found the way that Chicken played in the game. So very nice. Knight here, check, king here, and queen here, checkmate. So the king can't run. Okay, but Antics found actually a shorter solution, which is queen at g7 check, king h5, knight f6 check, king h4, and notice normally in this sort of position, this is actually a very common pattern in Crazyhouse, to really be aware of this. The pattern is knight here and queen here checkmate. Knight here, check. But here, you've got to be careful because that square is covered. So you have to go queen to g3, checkmate. So chess is the best game says, is there a link to the study? Yep, and we're building the study live on stream. So if you want to watch from within the study, that's the study link. It's a public study, and it's created by Saran Student, which is my study account. But it's not yet finished because we're making it as we go along. But I think the making is more interesting in a way than. So I mean, in the future, I might make another version of this study without the answers, and people can play around with it. But the point of it is to try and teach these basic themes. Okay, so this is actually really fun, and I'm going to make the G7 the main line because I think that's even more instructive in a way. Because this knight and queen pattern, that's how the knight and queen coordinate. The knight queen usually comes to this square here, but in this case, queen, you can also go queen here, and the king is cut off. So the knight cuts off the king. So okay, this is a really, really good example, I think, of knight and queen coordination. As I said, this is, I think, there's like one theme in Crazyhouse that is the most common theme, is knight and queen coordination. So when looking at these positions from the Crazyhouse World Championship, it was actually the most common theme when I just, and so I have actually the most examples of this. Schwanet against variance only. This is a game which Schwanet won against variance only. So what are we going to do here? Trying to work out if this is correct. Okay, so we'd love to just go queen at f7 check, but we can't because of this bishop. Our own king is a little bit precarious, but actually the bishop does provide some backward cover. So there's no, and this bishop also. So actually white's king is safer than it seems. So it is white to move, yeah. I was just observing. Notice how these bishops are actually providing quite good coverage for the white king if he can't find mate. Although the king looks quite exposed, actually, he's actually quite well defended. In the meantime, this bishop is providing very good cover for the black king. So there's yeah. So and this knight is providing cover of the d7 square. So there's only actually one check I can see in this position. So we might. So if we're let's play the check. And great things about check is they're forcing. Checks are not always the best move, as Fumitox advises us. Just because something is checked doesn't mean it's good. And obviously this is the best move from black, because if black goes here, as actually happened in the game, queen here is straight away checkmate, although that wasn't quite how the game ended, because this is bullet, so people were playing too quickly. So we can just do this as the first two moves. Now how to finish this off. So I'm just trying to calculate. Again, we're going to try and look for some checks. Knight f6 maybe, yeah, that looks like a nice idea. We might lose the knight, but Queen here is the other idea. I think after king here, he goes here or here. We're trying to work out how it continues. He probably doesn't want to go here, because then knight f6, king here, and knight. It doesn't quite work. But knight. Okay, so let's do it. If it was queen here, king here, knight here, king here, knight here, check. And then these two knights block off all the escape squares, and queen takes will be checkmate, unless I'm miscalculating. And queen c8 would be a little bit illegal, as Antic points out. Yeah, okay, so we found one mate. Queen d6 here. I think that would actually work. But real size, I think it's got an even nicer idea, which is knight f6. So, yeah, these two knights cover a lot. Like, where can the king go? King has to go either here or here. And taking the knight seems like a bad idea because then that opens us to a discover check. Okay, is that forced? No, in fact, king takes knight is a bad idea because of queen at d6 checkmate. Yeah, that's the reason. Okay, so if king takes knight, queen at d6 is just checkmate. So that's a good example of queen and knight coordinating. Okay, chess is the best game, says knight e7, king d7, queen at d6. Yeah, this is... Oh, I'm gonna come back to that line. I think that's also working. Knight f6, we've got king here, and then how are we going to finish this? Yeah, so okay, let's do the chess. I think I saw that line and it seemed to be working. So king has to go here. Queen at d6, king e8. Knight f6 comes in. King to f8. Oh, so you're saying knight g6 here. Okay, so I wasn't saying that, but knight g6 is interesting. So king to g7 is forced. At h6, king takes g6. Bishop g to f4. Oh gosh, this is going to get complicated. So what I'm suggesting here is, I think that's more efficient. This check here, because the knights then cover off everything, and he's just going to block, and then we take it. I think that's right. I'm just going to quickly engine check this this line. King e8, knight f6, king f8. I said knight f5. There's another way of doing it, which is bishop h6 also works apparently, and he can block, and then you can do the discover checkmate. That's the way to do it. You block off the king first. Chess is the best game. You block off the king with bishop h6 or knight f5. You block off the king and then you do your discovered mate. That's the pretty way of doing it. Okay, so turning the engine off though, let's see if we can find the original plan. I think I'm going to make that the main line. The bishop h6 was so pretty, but let's see if we can find this knight f6. So knight f6 forces king back to here. Okay, I'm thinking queen at d6 now. But how to... So queen d6, I like this move because it keeps the king penned in, so he has to block. But where's the checkmate? Queen, okay, queen c8. Ah, yes. Queen c8, yes. Rusai. Queen at c8, brilliant. Here, and then we have double checkmate. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Brilliant. Yes. That's also very pretty. So it's and I think that might be slightly shorter. And let me see. Yeah, knight f6 is slightly shorter. So I'm in two minds which to put as my main line, because that was very pretty. But that's so pretty, I'm going to have it as my main line. But knight f6 ending in this discovery, yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, this has been lovely. The next example is another chicken fumitox game. And it's another queen knight. Knight and queen, I call it. Knight and queen coordination, but this time it's black to play, so it's Fumitox getting his own back against chicken. Black to play. And yeah, the engine's off. Good. Phew. Okay, so we have 3 knights in hand and a queen. So it might be we just have far too much material for this puzzle to be interesting, which is a shame. I'm feeling like there are too many. Okay, so actually we can't do the sort of knight check here and here because the queen could just take a knight here. So, and we can't go queen here either because the queen is actually pinned. Okay, so this is actually a little bit more interesting. Yeah, okay, this is more interesting. So Riemann zeta function sees, yes, it must be knight c4 to start. Yeah, it just got to be knight c4 to start, because there is no other nice check. But we have this nice check. Just briefly, if the king came here, queen here would be checkmate. Antic says knight at g4, but knight at g4 can just be taken. So yeah, so knight at c4 seems to make sense. And if the king runs, okay, briefly, if the king runs here, we have a hook mate because the knight is protected. So that's going to be our core idea. And if the king runs here, we said we've got this mate because it's one of those mates where is it sparrowtail mate, or the king can't run back. So it's one of those bird mates. Okay, so clearly king has to run here or here. Those are going to be the two interesting ones. If the king runs straight down, again, I feel that's going to be an easy one because we have a knight in hand. We're just going to go queen at e3, and whichever way you run, we have either a mate like so, or if you run this way, we have even just knight. We don't even need another knight. We can just go knight here, and I think that's checkmate. Yeah. So the interesting one is going to definitely be king here. Sorry, not king here. I meant the interesting one is going to be this one, so we're going to have to promote this line, make the main line. Okay. Yeah, anything works. After king f2, you can do knight at g4. So knight at g4 is an interesting idea. And the idea is if once the bishop takes, you clear away the third rank. So now you have queen here, king back, and knight here, checkmate. That's a very nice idea. So that's going to be one way of doing things. Let's see if we can find some other ways. So knight g4, if you step back, then we could do something just like queen. We just got so much room. Just do this. But if you take it, we have queen here check, steps back, and knight here. Okay, so that's going to work nicely. Is there anything else? So what I'm thinking here, so I was thinking, can I go queen here? But what you have to watch for is, if I go queen here, he can he doesn't have to block with the piece in hand. So queen here, if you block with the piece in hand, I then have the same mate, queen e3 and knight here, checkmate. But he could block with this pawn, giving himself an escape square. So that's the sort of thing I'm slightly concerned with. And of course the queen is pinned. Yeah, okay. Thanks for reminding me. So that just doesn't work. So knight at g4 is very nice. Is there another way of doing things? So if I did do queen e3, king here. I was going to ask Stockfish if there's another way of doing things. Queen at e3. So obviously king f1 is here. Knight at e2. Okay, so these two pieces cut off all the diagonals, so this actually also works. Okay, so the king is actually in a mating net on g3. So that's something I hadn't noticed. I think the knight g4 is actually more instructive. Queen e3, knight at f2, knight at e2. Yeah, Antic got it. Well done. I think, yeah, so that is actually a shorter one. But in a way, knight at g4 is very instructive. So I'm gonna keep the knight g4 as a main line just for the sake of it being instructive. And now for the very last of these queen and knight ones, and this was a round one match between Opperweisen and Kostas. And Opperweisen was white. So let's see. So again, there's going to be. So of course we want to bring our knight in because we don't have any knights in hand with check. But this is more like calculating how to finish things off. So this is more like an exercise in calculation. So if the king steps back, then we're in good shape. If the king steps here, then we have maybe a pawn check and picking up a rook. Okay, so let's see, pawn here, check. Not entirely sure, but if he does something like this, queen, he better take with the king, because otherwise queen here will be checkmate. And then queen here check and rook here checkmate. So yeah, that would be very easy. If he steps that way, if he steps the other way, maybe, so I'm not sure. Not sure how to finish this. Queen, rook takes. So now we have a rook and a queen in hand, and the problem I'm having is... Oh, I've got a crazy way of doing it. Can it be right? So the crazy way I have is, what about this? Because if he takes with the rook, we have this smothered mate. And if he takes with the king, we have this very nice fork, forcing this, and then take. This is not a very quick mate at all, but he blocks, and we take, and he blocks, and we checkmate. So that's very pretty, but I'm sure there's something. I'm sure there's something faster. So I'm going to slightly cheat and say, well, what's the fastest way? Yeah. Oh, rook at b8 is the fastest way. Okay. Or at least in 1 second, that's the one that the engine saw. Is there anything else? Let's just see if there's something faster. So, nope, so that is the way to do it in that situation. Okay, cool, so we found it. Then there is still the stepping up option and stepping here option. If you step up, that's really not going to wash, because it's just going to be checkmate. Just as stepping down this way is going to be checkmate with queen at c7. So the one move I'm a little bit worried about is king here, because I can see I got this, but then the king could step this way. So I need something. How do I get at that king? So I've got a pawn and a queen in hand. So the thing about putting the queen here is that takes away the knight check. So I'd like to have a queen here and a knight here. That would be kind of ideal. So maybe just drop a pawn. So if he does do the... No, that doesn't quite work. Knight here. Yeah, that would work. King here and queen here checkmate. Swan at c5 maybe. So I think that forces king takes c5. And then, I think that's right, yeah. I think it forces this because after pawn at c5, if you were to step here, if he steps here, you've just got this check, and the king is coming here, and it's checkmate. And if the king goes the other way, we have the hookmate we discussed, this knight and queen forming a hookmate. So I think he has to take that pawn. And then we want to guard escape squares. So, and one way would be sealing, so drop a queen here just to seal him in, and then throw in checks. That would be something effective. Queen here. Wow. No, rook covers. Haha. Okay, so if the rook weren't there, then queen there would be very nice, because everything's then covered. B4 check. Ah, yeah, I missed that. B4. He has to take, but then he could run back. Oh, yes, nice. B4 takes, and we have this little swallowtail mate. Ah, very nice. And queen c3. Yep, very, very nice. Okay. So I'm just going to now quickly just engine check this line. C5 and A5 both work, so we did C5, so let's just check that line. Oh, so I didn't check one case. So king takes C5, B4. King takes B4, queen C3. Oh, king takes A4. Oops. Eek. We hadn't seen that. So that is a problem. Queen at C3 isn't mate. So b4 will work eventually, but it's not going to be the fastest. Queen at c7, cutting off the king, unsurprisingly, is going to work well. Check, and then check. Yeah, that's going to work well. That's a nifty move, defending that one on a4. Yeah, he takes on a4. So that's okay. That will work. So that's the way to actually do it. But we actually missed something else in our calculation, which is king a5. So let's turn the engine off. I did not consider king a5. So yeah, let's do this. And if he does this, then we do this checkmate. So he does have to take one of these two things. If he takes this, queen here is checkmate. And if he takes this, maybe I'm thinking maybe this to defend that pawn, but do I need to defend? Yeah. So b4, king takes b4. Okay, so what's the quick way of mating now? So I could go queen c3 again, but he's taking this pawn. So I feel like going c3, but there's nothing better. Okay, maybe queen here, but then he goes here. Okay, so a very slow way of mating is just to go queen here, he goes here, go bishop here, check, takes, takes. So eventually he goes here, and then knight here, checkmate. So we found a mate, but okay, what was the better way of doing it? In fact, going back a move. b4 is indeed correct. King takes b4. Make main line. c3 check. Yeah, it was more efficient. Okay, I could have guessed that. King takes c5. Then we cut the king off, and finally we're going to just use a pawn to deliver mate. Yeah. d4 checkmate. Okay, that's not surprising at all. But probably the mate with the smother idea is even nicer actually. So maybe make that the main line. Although that wasn't the purpose of that wasn't the concept. The concept was actually knight and queen working coordination. So actually, the other move which we hadn't considered, which might actually be the real purpose of the study, is king running away to the queen side. Now normally in these, now there's a pattern we've seen already, which is queen here, knight here, queen there, takes this pawn, checkmate. If we can do that, that's wonderful. But we can't do that because the rook covers knight d6. So instead we have to go queen here, and this engine should be off because I'm still trying to think. If the king runs here, we have knight here, checkmate, so that's good. And if the king runs here, we have queen here, checkmate. So I think let's just engine check. I think that is right. If king goes to d7, we just have a mate in 2, yes. Okay, so we've checked all the lines, hopefully. Yeah, a little bit of an oopsie with a4, but... And it says we also have knight a7. That's going to be... Yeah, so seal off. Yeah, anyway. In some line, I'm sure. But, okay. Oh, you're talking about after here. That's nice, yeah. Oh, that's very nice. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. That's very nice. Instead of going queen c7 check, we've got knight takes a7 checkmate. Yeah, that's very nice. Nice one. Okay. Next, we've done with the queen and knight, and we're going to look at the rook and knight. I'm not quite sure. This is a game between the Lazy MD and Jan Lee, but I'm not quite sure who was... Ah, yes, it was... was it between... Yeah, I think it was. Yes, this is correct. The lazy MD was white, and he did indeed find mate in this position, but not. So it's a new theme, not the shortest mate. So how to mate in this position? So this is a very classic mate with rook and knight. I mean, the most classic mate with rook and knight is the Arabian mate with the king in the corner. And the knight both protects the rook and stops the king from running to g8. But the second most classic rook and knight mate is something what I sometimes call this the atomic mate, because it's the mate in atomic with rook and knight. And I'm sure you guys can see it's just this. So as long as, and this is a mate in atomic because you're not in atomic, you're not allowed to take any piece with the king, because otherwise you'd blow up the king, which is not allowed. So as long as this, and so in standard chess or in Crazyhouse, as long as this rook is protected, this is a very nice configuration. The rook and the knight, rook in front of the knight in this way is a checkmate. So it's a very pretty mating pattern to be aware of. Okay, we've only got one rook and knight mate in this series, but I'm sure others will come up. So next one is going to be, we're going to already go on to rook and diagonal mates. And this is a game between John Stuckey and Opper. And it's going to be black to play. Yeah, so as I said, we're doing new themes, so we're back to quite easy puzzles. This is very pretty. Rook and diagonal. We could check here or here. It turns out here is slightly better, or they both are mating. Yeah, rook e2. Yeah, rear side gets it very quickly. And the point is, if the king takes, this is checkmate. The bishop defends the rook. So this is a very important pattern. It can happen a lot in games, and if it goes back, this is also checkmate. Okay, well that's actually, we're done with rooks. And the next one we're going to look at is knights. Oh, maybe, which one do we look at next? We're going to look at knights next. So, first we're going to look at knights and pawns. And this is a game between King Switcher and Penguin. So it's, and I think it's a mate that Penguin found against King Switcher. So it's black to play. Yeah, engines off, that's good. Yeah, this is a very nice, just double check. No, it's not in the Opening Explorer. Okay, so we have a load of knights around the white king. This is a very important pattern to know. And the pattern is, if we can get a pawn in front of the king defended by a knight, then another knight will be checkmate. So in this position, this actually works straight away with just knight here. You can take this knight, but these two knights cut off the king to only go to this one square, and that last pawn is enough to mate. Because you're, yeah, so more often maybe you might see this position with a pawn here and the knights here and here, and then the king is mated. But this is a variation on that. So even though white has played h3 to give his king a little more luft, because his queen is no longer guarding f3, and the bishop was guarding it, but not enough because there are two knights. So it's a very pretty mate. The double f3 was attacked twice by knights, but it's only guarded once. So very pretty mate. Yeah, and very important to keep this one in mind. Okay, now we're going to look at two knights without any pawns, and it's a very nice mate that was found by Clearcast. Against Black Cow. Okay, so I mean, white has a lot of pieces in hand, but his king is a little bit on the ropes. I mean, black's got all the pieces on the board basically, and the king can't run back to safety because the knight cuts it off. So the first move seems, well, we have no pieces in hand, so we need to keep with the checks. So the first move seems clear. And what happened in the game, which is quite funny in a way, is king h3, knight f2, checkmate. Now this is very important. If you have two, I guess this is so two pieces. We've seen earlier how a queen and a knight diagonally 3 apart control the whole square between them. So this is another example of this. Two knights which are 3 apart control a whole square. Okay, so actually, okay, so clearly the king shouldn't have gone to h3. It should rather have gone to g4. But we could still do this move, and it's still controlling a whole square, and that pushes the king all the way to here. And I think this is checkmate anyway. Yeah, so slightly less stunning than king h3, knight f2, checkmate, but the same concept. I think that's right, yeah. So notice two knights working together, they can control a lot. I think that's a good example to have in mind. Okay, so we're done with knights already. We should really have more of that, but if you look at Jan's games, you see lots of examples of knights coordinating in amazing ways. But our next one is going to be two diagonals. And it's going to be a round 1 match from Opperweisen against Kostas. And Opper was black. So that means that I got it all wrong. It was Kostas against Opperweisen. Okay. So actually we see this instantly. It should be an instant C. We just take here. If the king goes into the corner, we have a 2 pawns checkmate. That's a good one to know. The pawns control everything. And if it takes, we have this. Now this is another very important pattern. We've seen in the last example how two knights 3 apart control the whole square. Now we're seeing how two bishops 3 apart control the whole square. So in a sense, 3 apart is like the power position of two pieces. When you have your pieces 3 apart, they control everything in between in a very strong way. It's quite a good rule of thumb to have in mind. So let's do the next one, because we're doing just past a third of the way through, so we'll try and keep going. And we've got some interesting ones to come. This is another multiple diagonals one. It says multiple diagonals. I'm not quite sure why not just 2 diagonals, but okay. Multiple diagonals, and it's a game between Chouinette and variance only. And it was black to play. Black to play. Oh, this one. So I'm not sure if I got it the right way round. Yeah, it was actually variance only against Chouinette. And Chouinette, it was a critical game, in fact. And Schwanet missed the mate in this game, and white went on to win. Yeah, indeed. So I think Schwanet just went with the knight. Let's see what it said. Knight g3 check. Yeah, knight g3 check, pick up the rook, stuff like this. And what he missed is he has enough diagonals. He has 3 diagonals in hand to do something better. So what does he have? Yeah, what he actually missed is that this knight is pinned. So he could just go pawn here, check. King has to go here. Bishop here, check. King has to go here. And bishop here, checkmate. Just everything sealed off by these diagonals. Yeah, I guess it's just missing the pin, and obviously this is bullet, so it's very easy to miss things. So yeah, so Variance Only managed to survive and went on to win that game, and he's one of the candidates in the Crazyhouse World Championship. So congratulations to him. So we've done with knights, we've done with bishops. Now we're going to look at knights and bishops working together. And this is also a very common theme, just like queens and knights working together. Knights and bishops is a very, very important theme in Crazyhouse to know how to use your knights and bishops. We're going to look at more abstract themes soon, once we're finished with these piece themes, stuff like deflecting the defender and magnet mates and stuff like this. But to begin with, this is the game between Blitz, Bullet, Clearcast. We're going to just first finish with the basic mating patterns with different pieces before we go into the more conceptual mating patterns. So this was white to play. Blitz, Bullet against Clearcast. Yeah. So this is, you want to get a discovered check, don't you? So you want to put a pawn on g7. Just trying to see what comes next. Yeah, you want pawn at g7 just to have this. And my instinct is to go knight h5 discovered check. But actually we don't need to. We could just do this, because this knight actually covers a lot of squares for the king. And if the king goes back, obviously this is just very simple. So the king would have to step forwards. Let's promote that. But then bishop here is checkmate. The bishop and the pawn covering everything off. So this is the knight and the bishop working together very nicely. In fact, there is another option in this position, which is queen takes knight. Then we have knight takes queen, winning the queen with check. We've seen earlier how powerful that can be, and that will work just fine for us too. Okay, so this is an illustration of knights and bishops working together from the game of Blitz Bullet against Clearcast. So Blitz Bullet went on to win that game and win his match against Clearcast, and he is also one of the candidates. We're going to have another game from that match, but this one Clearcast won. So knight and bishop. No knights and bishops. So this time it's Clearcast as white, and I think Clearcast won this one. Yes. Okay. Ryusai says, do I know how to checkmate with knight and bishop in chess? And the answer is yes. And I've also, very amusingly, played with the king against king, knight, bishop against Stockfish 8 and managed to get a draw. Because I hid my king in the wrong corner and Stockfish 8 on Lichess didn't know how to get me out of the wrong corner. So having said that I know how to do it, I've also trained against Stockfish 8 and failed. But I really do know how to do it. And I mean, so basically you just drive the king to the edge of the board, and then if it's in the wrong corner, that's no problem. You use the knight to get it out of the wrong corner. You use a bishop to cover the next square, and then you try and keep your king in opposition. And now, because your knight was there coming out of the corner, you move your knight in a W formation. That doesn't look right. But yeah, you move your knight in a W formation, all the while keeping your king in opposition. And the problem is the black king will try to run to the opposite dark corner, and you have to use your light-coloured bishop, because I suppose it was in here, to try and cut off the king. All the while your knight, remember, is in this W, so the knight will cover dark squares while your bishop covers light squares. So that's the pattern. You have a diagonal here with light squares, and so what you actually see from this, actually, so it is not completely pointless in a ZH context, is that the knight and the bishop work best when they are on the same colour. So when you're a light squared bishop, you're moving from this square to this square, because when your knight is on a light square, it coordinates very well with the bishop, because the knight covers the dark squares while the bishop covers the light squares. And basically the idea is you hem in the king into smaller and smaller triangles until you have the king just restricted to these two squares, and the bishop cutting off this square in some way, and then you just try and once you've got it to these two squares, you deliver a knight check to this square, so he's restricted to this one square, and then it's a bishop checkmate. That's basically the idea. So okay, bishop takes pawn, king here. That's a good start. And we might be a little bit concerned about here, but we've got two pawns in hand, so we've always got pawn here, which would be checkmate if he ever did that. So we could do this. So what's the king going to do? It can't run to here because pawn here is checkmate, so he has to kind of take it. Takes, and I said he can't run to here because pawn here is checkmate, so he has to take it. Okay. And at this point, I'm thinking just knight here, pawn here. Pawn here would probably do it. Is there something more efficient? We've got two pawns. Yeah. Is there a nicer way of doing it? We could maybe even do this. That will draw. If he goes back there, then at h6 will be checkmate, so you'd have to take it. Ruiz says, I think the engines don't know how to do it without the table bases. So I think they know how to mate, but they don't know how to... yeah, I think they know how to mate as long as they're within... Yeah. But if they're stuck in the wrong corner, they can get a bit confused. That's all, yeah, you're right. Okay, so let's see. How do we mate in this position? I guess this is boring because we can just use pawns. Or we just use a knight. So this feels a bit uninteresting. So knight here, king here, pawn here, king here, pawn here. That just feels, yeah, so it feels like we've done it already. Is there another way? Because the king can't run up here, it could only run here. Knight here check might even work. Knight here check, king here, pawn here, king here, and pawn here checkmate. Is there a more efficient way of doing it? That's what I'm just thinking. Is there a way of using the queen somehow? I'm going to look at the engine to see if there's a more interesting way of doing it. It just says pawn at g5, king e7, pawn at f6, king d6, and this checkmate. Okay. And the other way I was saying is knight at h5. So basically, these are just equally good ways of doing it. And this, we don't have to even go pawn at c5 also. So there are a zillion ways of doing it. But what's important here is, yeah. What I was wondering is there a more efficient way of doing it? And yeah, knight at g4 I said also works. So if, yeah, king e7, same idea. King here and knight here, or pawn. What I was wondering slightly is, does bishop here work at all? King takes, queen here. Not really, the king just goes back. So it's not more effective. Yeah, we still need okay, so we see that we do need quite a few pawns as well as a knight to get this mate to work. Knight at g4 also works, yeah. So knight at h5 works, knight g4 works, even just a pawn at g5 works. Oh, so we didn't need the knight. Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, so we didn't need the second knight. We could just do it with pawns. That isn't actually quite interesting. So using the knight, we didn't need actually a pawn here. That's very pretty actually. Now notice the bishop and the knight 3 away from each other, again in that power position. The knight covering the 2 dark squares while the bishop covers the light squares. Okay, so this is really, really nice. Notice how the bishop and the knight are on the same colour, and that's why they work so well together. Okay. The next one is a game between Schwanet and variance only. And Schwanet won this particular game. Knights and bishops. Schwanet variance only. And it was white to play. So engine off, good. Okay. Oh, this. So there's only one first move, which is you have to break in. And yeah, this is very pretty because if the king goes back, we have, and this is, yeah, bishop and knight, again on the same color. One's covering the light squares, the other's covering the dark squares. So he has to take. Okay, very nice. Now what? Now we could move this bishop in, just keeps this pawn guarded, and he might step up. This is his only square. If he steps back, we have the same idea. Pawn here check, king here, knight here checkmate. So he has to step up, and then I think I see a mate in 1. The king wants to run this way, so we can cut it off from here or from here, and it's a mate in 1. Unless I've made a mistake, that just feels like, yeah, indeed. King f5, and we have 2 mates in 1, knight at e3 or knight at h6. Yeah. So yeah, that's the bishop and knight's working coordination. Bishop here, you either have this, or you have the king going back, which is supposed to be the main line. But I don't know. I think this is quite nice. Now this position with 2 knights. Notice how 2 knights control. They also control these squares. But they control a whole sort of barrow in front of them. That's also something nice to bear in mind. Because the knights are on different colours, they control lots of squares. So, okay. So one more bishop and knight. This is a game from just earlier this week. It wasn't actually from the first 3 rounds of it was actually from the candidates match between Little Plotkin and Oppa Wazen. Bishops and knights. Little Plotkin, Oppa Wazen. And Plotkin was white. Got the engine off, good. Ah, this is very pretty. So when he actually moved his queen was attacked on h5, he moved it to g5, and Oppa placed the bishop on f6, and I was thinking to myself, he's letting his queen get kicked around with tempo, and this is a very important concept in Crazyhouse, is if you do move your queen out into the center of the board or to do something, the opponent can hit that queen with pieces in hand, and if you just keep on moving the queen around the board, he can put all his pieces in hand on the board, and a position which is very favorable to you can suddenly become very favorable to your opponent. And this is actually the reason why Jan Lee loves to sack his queen, because when you sack your queen, your opponent has to take back the queen, which means it's then your move again. So you get a great initiative not only do you get the piece on which you stack the queen, not only might you wreck your opponent's position with the queen sack, but it's also your move, so you get initiative. So it's a great way of getting initiative to sack the queen. Having said that, you're losing a queen. Fumitox was joking a week or so ago when commentating on one of these Crazyhouse World Championship matches that if you ever want to sack your queen, you should ask yourself a certain question first. And that question was, are you Jan Lee? And if the answer comes back yes, then go ahead and sack your queen. But if not, then don't. But I think he has there's a certain truth in that Jan knows how to sack his queen, and the average player sometimes doesn't sack their queen correctly. Because yeah, so you need to get some compensation for the material. And Jan does sack quite heavily, but he knows what he's doing in a way. So that's why I found when I started Crazyhouse, watching Jan Lee's streams were immensely instructive, but also I found after watching them, when I was going back to playing 1700s and 1800s, I wasn't necessarily having the same success as before watching them, because I was trying to play at too high a level for my own capabilities. So Riosai says Queen F6. Yeah, so Little Hawkins Queen is really getting kicked around here. Like if you retreated, there's going to be a knight drop and so on, and black is going to be very safe with this wall of bishops. But straight away he has this queen sack. Okay, that's very nice. Now what? King takes. Well, that Riosai's already said. Bishop G5. This is very nice because the bishop now protects the knight, and knight E5 is now checkmate. So this is, so it's the knight and the bishop on the same color, even though these knights these knights are not really working together very well because they're both covering the same squares. It's the knight and the bishop here that are really working together well, and the pawn then covers off the last square, and then knight actually covers off that square. So it's great coordination from all the pieces. This is a really beautiful mate. So you sack your queen, bishop guards the knight, which releases this knight to be a beast and deliver checkmate. Yeah, and this is really beautiful mate. And so we're done with bishop and knight, but we've got one more example, which is going to be a game between Little Plotkin and Garnek 123. So often in Crazyhouse, you don't promote to a queen, you promote to a knight, especially if you can do so with check. The Little Plotkin against Garnek 123 was a very exciting round 3 match in the Crazyhouse World Championship from about a week or two ago. And there's a really critical move here that Little Plotkin found. Yeah, I'll let chat have a think of at least the first move, and then we'll play through and then think again. So often in Crazyhouse, although the lines are very forcing, because it's played at quite high speed, it's not doesn't necessarily see the whole line, but one just simply sees it has to be good because we pick up material and then we can think again what to do next. And if we either deliver another sequence of checks or we play something defending our own king. So can anyone see move 1? So it's not like in standard chess where like move 1's not enough. So somehow if you can find a move that picks up material. Okay, so actually let me think again. What would move 1 be here? Because there are actually 2 nice possibilities. Yeah, I realize why 1 is better. Knight at c8, says Research. Absolutely. And the reason why this is such a nice move, by the way, the other move I was considering is maybe block off the king. And if he tries to play f6, that's no good because the knight covers f7. But there's no need to block off the king, because if the king dared to run, wow, that's checkmate. So there's no need to block off the king. So rook takes knight or queen takes knight forced. There's actually a good reason for going queen takes knight, which is you'd give your king actually a square to go to. So that could be considered. So we're going to have to consider both. So rook takes knight, and now what? Yeah, I mean, now we all know it's under promotion, so we're going to promote to knight. Now we definitely want to take it, because if we just did something like this, we've got queen takes queen, king takes queen, and queen here checkmate. Okay, so that would be pointless. So we definitely want to take it. And just let's look at the other possibility. The other possibility was this and this check. And again, queen at d8 is a serious issue, so you have to take it. Okay, now this one is just checkmate here. Here, check, and there, checkmate. So that line is a little bit easier. What's going to be a little bit harder is if he takes with the rook. Okay, so taking the rook should be the main line. So takes with the rook, takes. Okay, now what next? So we're done with the under promotion theme, and it's going to be another theme we looked at earlier in the stream, which is that it. And remember, keep in mind, if the king ever runs to f6, we always have this mating idea. It's very pretty. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily realize that, because whenever the kings run to f6, I would have thought I needed a diagonal piece to finish off the mate, a diagonal piece from here. But yeah, it's quite pretty to realize you don't. So we're learning new patterns all the time. It's really, really nice. So yeah, what to do next? Okay, so the other theme is going to be picking up the queen with check. Rook at d7, indeed. Okay, so as we said, if king here, we got mate, so he has to go back. What next? Rook here. Okay, again, he has to just do this, because if he dares to take, it's not going to end well for him, having a queen in hand. So the theme of this is winning the queen with check. And that's how we do it. We win the queen with check. And if he steps here, it's going to be here. So let him step out here for once, and let's make that the main line. So that's really pretty mate that little Plotkin found against Garnet 123. Really nice. Although in the game it was a slightly easier mate because Garnet took with the queen instead of the rook. But same concept. Okay, so we're done with the various piece mates. And we're going to now look at some of the conceptual mates. And quite scarily, we're only about halfway through. So we're going to start with the concepts. Now, the first is a very easy concept. Someone might not even consider it a concept, which is the double take mate. And it's a game between Fumitox and Chicken Crossroad. And Chicken Crossroad won this game. And I said we're doing very easy stuff to begin with, because this is a beginner stream teaching lots of basic ideas. So it won't take you long to see the mate here. We just dump a rook. That would be checkmate unless you take it, but you double take. Takes, take back. So it's a very simple concept. Nothing too complicated. How different is the Crazyhouse version of Stockfish compared to the standard one? Yeah, very different. This Crazyhouse Stockfish is designed for Crazyhouse, and it's pretty strong. So the next one is going to be a game between Blitzbullet and Clearcast. As we said earlier, Blitzbullet got the better of Clearcast overall in their series, and he also found mate in this position, apparently. So just when I first look at this position, I'm like, black's got some really serious threats. Like white is not very well defended, but it is white's move that helps. Yeah, and I see why the mate is. Queen here, check. King here. Pawn here, which would be mate, but he could take it, but then take back. That's not really a double take, but yeah, it is. It's a take and take back. Yeah, so it's a double take mate. So, okay, and that's all of the double take mates. A very basic concept. Next thing we're going to look at, and it might not be a mating idea, we'll see, is called exploiting the pin. Exploiting a pin, and we're going to look at a round 1 game between Opperweisen and Kostas VL, and it was white to play. It is a mating idea. Okay, yes. So what's the piece that's pinned? Of course it's G7. How are we going to exploit that pin? Notice that black has got no rooks in hand, so we can just go queen here, check. If you had a rook, then we'd have to take with the bishop, and maybe hope for a knight, something like this. In this case, he just has no rooks in hand, so this is just checkmate. Very beautiful idea, very easy to miss in a game. Exploiting the pin. Really beautiful concept. Let's look at another example of this. This is in a game between Little Plotkin and Garnek 1-2-3. Garnek got knocked out in round 3 by Little Plotkin, but this was a game I think he won. Let's see. And it's called Exploiting a Pin. And it was black to play. Trying to remember. Is it black to play? Black is in check. That's worrying. Black is in checkmate. That's very worrying. So something went wrong there. Because this is actually the final mate that I've got on the board. Yeah, so it's actually a mate from Little Plotkin against Garnek 1-2-3. But I haven't got... Yeah, it's too late in the game for me to dig up the game using Explorer, which makes it hard for me to find it. So that's sad. Okay, so it's a very pretty mate that, in fact, Little Plotkin found against Garnek 1-2-3, but I'll have to dig up how it came about. Yeah, that's unfortunate. So let's just move on to the next one. So we've looked at pins, and now we're going to look at forks. And this is a game between Schwanet and Rakastrov, and it's called, the theme we're going to look at is potential forks. Schwanet and Rakastrov. Very nice. Garnek is indeed FM Rishas, yes. And I'll be able to find that position again just by looking at the final positions of their games. So I just need to take a, just need to take a note. That was chapter 33, which I'll have to edit after the stream. So Schwanet played a very nice move in this position. He played pawn at f7. The idea is if the queen takes the pawn, you have knight at h3 check. It's a really annoying move. But if the king takes the pawn, let's just have a look. King takes the pawn is a better move. There's rook at f4, knight at e5 is another idea. Let's see what happened in the game. What happened in the game was king h8, which was not such a good move because rook at g8. Yeah, this leads to mate. King takes g8. Then you put a knight on h6, so the king tries to go into the corner, and we've seen this before. You use a diagonal piece to draw the king out. So knight h5, if the king goes back anyway, queen g7 is checkmate. So the king has to take that knight. Queen to g7, which we've seen before. King goes here. And the knight is actually covering any further escape, so this is checkmate. So that's, yeah, that was pretty much, no, how did the game go? Knight h6, yeah, and then it's beyond the opening explorer. But that's basically how the game continued, something like that. Okay, but what's not so clear is what happens if king takes pawn. I mean, knight e5 looks interesting. I'm not really sure. I should really. I mean, this is quite important to know how to continue. So knight d5. Okay, suppose king to g8. What's the idea? We've got knight, bishop, and rook. Bishop to f7. King to g7. Knight to h5. King to h8. Rook to g8. Okay, so the white king is sufficiently safe that you're just laying a lot of pieces on the board. So it was a nice little attack from Schwanet, using a potential fork. And we've got one more example of that, which Bonobo pulled out against King Switcher. So potential forks. Bonobo. Complicated one to write. And let's have a look at it. Okay, except that he didn't pull it out. He did go on to win the game. Oh no, he didn't. He actually didn't go on to win the game. Yes, this is a critical point. The move he should have played is pawn at e6. And I can turn the engine off. It's laying a piece right in the heart of your opponent's camp. And the idea is, if the queen dares to take the pawn, you have this, just simply picking up the queen. In the meantime, your king is very safe. And if he doesn't take it, you're just laying down pieces all over his position. So like, it says queen to c7, you have queen h5 check. So queen h5 I'd be a little bit nervous with because of bishop at g6. So I'd be a little bit nervous, like my queen is getting hit with tempo, but apparently that's completely fine because I've got this move to come. If the king goes here, I have knight here, checkmate. So he has to sack his queen. So we're winning a queen with check. Okay, and this is not going to end well. Apparently he can go to f7 and he's not getting mated immediately, but this is not pretty for black. Let's just put it that way. King to h7 being the best move. Knight at f8 suggesting. I'm not quite sure why. Because knight at f8 I'm worried about rook takes knight. What's the follow-up? So if knight takes f8, rook takes. There must be some idea. Queen takes pawn. King takes queen. Ah, bishop takes rook. Of course, you guard it away. The queen stops the rook from protecting. Okay, now I think I can see what's going on. Rook here is very nice. King takes rook, and then you just invade with your queen and mate on g7. Okay, so that's an example line. But going back, I think the point of it is if he takes, you're picking up the queen. So it's a potential fork, and a very powerful move at e6. In the game he actually played knight at d6, which looks promising. It's not nearly as strong as at e6. Okay. Now we're going to look at, so we've done potential pins, potential forks. Now we're going to look at multiple piece pressure, breaking into your opponent's camp. Multiple piece pressure. Wow, I apparently had multiple piece pressure chapters in the past. I'm quite amazed. And it's called Breaking In, and we're going to look at a game between Schwanet and variance only. And it will be black to play. Yeah, and this isn't a mating thing, it's just an example of a position where variance only had really piled up a huge amount of pressure on f2, and it's a crushing attack. He played knight takes f2, and Schwanet didn't recognize that queen at h1 is a mate threat, but the reason he didn't recognize it is because rook takes knight is really no better because of this. If you take the knight, you're doomed, but if you don't take the knight and you have no pieces in hand, queen h1 is unstoppable. So he played, what did he play in the game? He played bishop to e3. Bishop to e3, that doesn't make sense, because you could just take that bishop. Oh, I see, the rook defends the bishop. Yeah, that makes sense. But the problem is it just ran into this. So I'll just make that the main line. And this is a pretty mate, by the way. The knight on f2 defending a queen on h1. Okay, so we're done with that. And now we're going to start a new theme. We're on more of these sort of conceptual themes. The next theme is going to be clearance. And this is a game between Clearclast and Blitz Bullet. And it was white to play. White to play. Oh, I need to turn the engine off. Eek. Okay. So the king looks really smothered. So we would love to have some kind of smothered mate. But these pawns defend. But what you notice is that one of these pawns doesn't really defend, because if it ever took, queen at h7 would be checkmate. So what you do is knight here check, the other pawn takes, take back. Now this pawn has to take because it's smothered, and queen here. So the theme of this is you want to clear h7, and that's how you do it. So we're going to see a few more examples, in fact 2 more examples of this clearance concept. And hopefully these examples are, yeah, for people who are just beginning Crazyhouse especially, seeing these examples should be inspiring, so that you can apply these concepts in your own games. So Kyle Legion against Swift Devil. This was in fact, so we saw a clearance example in fact earlier, with there was a knight g4 clearing away a rank. So I should take away that. There was a knight g4 clearing away a rank that we saw in an earlier example. But okay, Kyle Legion. Oh, this was actually a missed mate. So the clearance idea is, wouldn't it be lovely if we could clear away this pawn and then queen at d1 is checkmate? So that's the idea. Here takes, and queen at d1 is checkmate. Okay, so it's the fact that the d3 is actually unprotected, and if the king goes here or here, queen at e1 is checkmate. So king has to go. King has to go forwards. Now this is the sort of situation where you're wondering, do I bring the knight back to try and grab hold of it or not? Something worth bearing in mind though is this bishop cuts off. So if queen here, king here, we actually, the king wants to go here, but we actually have mate in 2. So because the bishop should draw it in a similar way, bishop to here. If the king goes here, it wants to go here and here, but there's a way of stopping it. So this is actually another theme as well, which is blocking the escape route. So however it blocks it, even if it blocks it with the queen, this is checkmate. The queen cuts off this, the bishop cuts off this, so it cuts off to here rather. The bishop cuts off to here. So the king is in the mating net. So it's quite a nice idea. So I could still draw this. How about knight at d4? Yep. Knight at f4 would work. No, hang on. Bishop is covering. So notice that bishop is covering. Instead of queen e1. Yeah, knight at d4 is interesting. The problem is this square is not protected, so the king could just step back, like so, even. Queen here, check. Queen here. If you ever put a pawn here, just take it with the knight. So takes. I mean, you could come back here, check. Oh, hang on. Whoa, yeah, so it might work. Sorry, I'm getting it a bit. So let's just turn the engine on to see. Knight at f4. Oops, bishop takes knight. Whoops. Yeah, bishop can take knight. So knight takes bishop is what? Okay. Just take out knight f4. But there's knight at d4 is what you meant, didn't you? Knight at d4. Yeah, not knight at f4. Knight at d4. Okay, so I'm just going to look at the engine. Knight at d4. Yeah, no, that's very nice, because if you step back, queen at e1 is going to be checkmate. Okay, so we're going to take this knight. Okay, and now the knight stops the king from running back. That's good. We could do a similar. Okay, but how do we mate? Okay, we could go bishop takes pawn here, maybe. Is that correct? So I just checked. I just looked and said so. It says it is correct. So that's good. But now I'm still thinking without looking. So the knight's protected, so it could run to here, but then or here or here. Okay. So let's just turn the engine off and have a nice little think. So if it runs here, queen here and pawn here look promising, because queen here cuts off this, yeah, and that would be fine. I mean, I'm not sure if it's the fastest, but that will definitely work. So there's no point running there. If you run here, you could do the same kind of thing. I mean, this is not necessarily the fastest, but you just come back to here. If you run here or here, pawn here is going to be checkmate. So that only leaves this one, and I fear tiredness is getting to me because I'm not seeing things as clearly as I would like. Queen here, check. King here. Ah, yes. I feel like I could take this pawn even. Queen takes pawn check. If here, pawn here is checkmate, so you'd have to step back. And then I have knight here, check, king here, and queen here, checkmate. So, not sure if that was the best, but that seemed to work. Let's just see what the engine says. Queen at d3, king f4, queen takes pawn, king g3, yay. Yeah, it follows this. Oh, okay, knight and pawn mate. Okay, that's a nice little pattern, knight and pawn mate. Bishop h6 first, maybe also. So knight at d4, bishop h6. So that we saw already. So, oh, we were talking about the king here line. I think queen at e6 worked. Queen at d3 worked really nicely. So instead of queen check, but then the knight hangs. So we'd have to go queen here first, check, king f4, and then bishop h6 maybe, and then bishop h6, with the idea that he only has this square to go to. I think that would work nicely. because if he blocks, so if he blocks with anything, so suppose it's a queen, we don't want to take it. Even if we didn't want to take it, yeah, probably we would have to take it if it's a queen. But if he blocks with a knight, yeah, knight would be interesting. So queen takes pawn, king here. Well, it's going to be the same mate. Knight f5 check. So basically, I wouldn't go bishop h6 simply because the purpose of bishop h6 is to stop the king running to g5. But we are never worried about a king running to g5 because we just do this. So I wouldn't. That's why I wouldn't bother with bishop h6. So we're not scared. We're not scared of the bishop of the king running in this direction. So this, yeah. So this, we should promote this one, promote variation. But okay, but we should make the main line queen at e1 because I think it's slightly more, slightly nicer. And if the king goes this way, now let's try and find the mate. I'll turn the engine off. Okay, the engine tells us it's a mate in 3, so we can take here, and he's only got one move, and then we can go here, check, and this is very easy then, and here, checkmate. Because if he steps forwards, we have queen here, checkmate as well. So yeah, we didn't need very many pieces to finish it off, but we did in that line. In some sense, that's the main line, even though this is a slightly longer mate. We takes f2, and so on. Okay. Yeah, thanks Resai for sticking with us because this is, I know this is a long stream. So clearance, retarded platypus against Master Tan. So retarded platypus, this was a great, he's a great Crazyhouse player, but he ran into Master Tan, who's a legend of the game from Australia, and he almost beat him. But in round 3, Master Tan did finally prevail. It came to tie breaks. They were 10-10 after 20 games, but on tie breaks, Master Tan won it. And this is another example of clearance. They're going to get a little bit more difficult in theory as we go on. So let me see. Yeah, so this wasn't actually a mate found. In fact, retarded platypus, I think, went on to lose this game, but he had a mate here. So in the game, he took this rook, and I think Master Tan found a mate. If I just take the rook and just look at the engine a second, is there a mate for black? No, but black is winning, so it's not. Yeah, there is a mate at f3. At f3, knight takes f3, bishop takes knight, and if you don't. If you just drop back, we've got queen at e2, we're picking up the rook with check. So yeah, things are looking hairy. And yeah, and White's problem is he only has heavies to block with. Which means just rook g2, king here, queen takes rook. Block. So yeah, this was kind of tragedy for retarded platypus. Because he played rook takes d1, and he had a much stronger move. It's quite difficult. It's a combination of a lot of ideas. So one idea is he wants to go queen at d8 checkmate, but he can't because of the bishop, and he can't do anything because he's only got pawn, queens, and hands. And d7 is mightily well protected. So the idea is you take this knight. And now we have a knight in hand. Can you see the devastating finish? Now we have a knight. So it's a mixture of a clearance idea and a deflect the defender idea. quite an amazing finish if you'd found it. Rook takes knight, bishop takes, and with the knight in hand, and this is definitely the hardest of our clearance puzzles. So anyone in chat see it? Knight d6, says Rosai 8000. Indeed. And if you take with the bishop, queen at d8. If you take with the pawn, queen at f7. Yeah, that's it. Whatever you do, it's mate. Pawn takes knight, queen takes f7. Bishop takes knight. I mean, it's like these three knights, like the masters of the apocalypse, who've come for you. Maybe put the bishop d8 as the main line. Wow. Yeah, I mean, this is very beautiful. Very beautiful. And that was I think the toughest of the clearance positions that I wanted to share. And now we'll go on to the next topic, which is distracting the defender. And this is an incredibly common topic, and it kind of follows on really nicely from that, because that was both a clearance and a deflection of the defender. So we're going to start with some really easy ones that we almost don't need to deflect the defender. This is actually a mate I found myself against Le Professionnel. So it's a nice easy mate. As black. Engines off, good. We want to checkmate this white king. It's quite smothered. In the corner, we've got plenty of pieces, 2 knights, a bishop, a rook, a queen. So what do? Yeah. We drop the knight first, which deflects the bishop, and then the queen will finish the job. Very easy. Okay, so we're going to look at another example of this, which is going to should also be fairly simple. This was King Switcher against Penguin. Penguin knocked out King Switcher, so Penguin is one of the candidates, in one of the 8 candidates in the Bullet Crazyhouse World Championship. So we can look forward to some fun streams, some fun Crazyhouse streams on Penguin's Twitch. And yeah, actually this was a missed mate from King Switcher. So we want to take on e8. We simply go here. It would be checkmate, but the rook could take. But then we have rook takes knight, or yes, so you can't promote because the queen would cover. So rook takes knight, not pawn takes. Rook takes, and it's checkmate. So a nice easy example. The next one is one that Jan Lee found in his game against PKNM. And that was in fact his round 3 match was against PKNM. And I'm not seeing it. Yeah, he didn't actually find it. Yeah, that was quite interesting. I mean, he won the game just fine. Didn't need to find it. So he's got a pawn and a rook. Let's think. Yes, I see it now. So the dark squares are really weak in black's position. Yeah, should I give you, maybe I'll give chat a few moments to try and see if you can find it. But we've still got quite a few of these. We still got 3 more deflect the defender examples, so it's a really common theme that comes up a lot. Okay, so it's just queen here, and it's very beautiful because if you take this queen, that's checkmate. That's the, and if you don't take the queen, then you're not. things are not going to end well. We don't even need the rook in hand. So yeah, pretty nice. The bishop and the rook working together. Okay, let's look at the next one. It's the game between Blitz Bullet and Clearcast. Deflect the defender. Blitz Bullet. And it was white to play. Yeah, so we're getting a little bit more complicated now. But still quite easy. So the key point of pressure in black's position is g7, and g7 is protected. So you simply go here. If the king goes aside, here's checkmate, so must deflect. So just to say, if king goes here, rook here would be checkmate. So you must deflect, but now g7 is weak. And Blitz Bullet, you don't need to give him a second. He loves going rook at h8 in his games. And he went rook at h8 and found the mate. He's very fond of that little tactic, I know from watching his Crazyhouse World Championship games in 2018. So the next one is between Jan Lee and the Lazy MD. And I think it was a game, yeah. I think it was an opportunity for the Lazy MD, which maybe he took. Let's have a look. It was black to play. Maybe he didn't take. No, I think this was Jan Lee. I think this was Jan Lee who found this. So it must be the Lazy MD Jan Lee. I think I've got it the wrong way around. I think this was a mate Jan Lee found, although he didn't play it in exactly the shortest way. He found it. Okay. So the idea is, so first we do this. Because now the king is smothered. This knight is cutting off the escape route, so he has to take. Then we go here, and he has to go here. Now this is a position where it's very tempting to do the discovered check. But actually, we only have a pawn and a rook in hand, so if we did a discovered check, yeah. It's not quite good enough. So what I'm trying to say is that knight here is even stronger. But why is it even stronger? Because if you were to go here, then I want to deflect the defender somehow. Knight d6, rook at g1. Oh yeah. Rook at g1. So if he blocks, knight here is going to be checkmate. So he has to do this. But then this is checkmate. Yeah. Yeah. So notice, if you just do this check, and you go here, and rook here, this works. I think that's right. So let's just double check that. So if you just do this, this one, okay, king e1 is still getting mated, king g1 is still getting mated. It's just a little bit more complicated, apparently. So let's just see the line we were thinking. Rook here, yeah, bishop f1. You have to just settle for taking the queen, or it takes king here. Yeah, you have to settle for the queen, and so you're still mating because you're taking the queen. But it's not nearly as neat as if you go to f4, I think. Oh, okay, I got it all wrong. Yeah, okay, I got it all wrong. So this is interesting. Because because the problem with knight f, the problem with either of these two moves is the king can go to g1. So I got it all wrong. You first have to throw in the check. Yeah, you first have to throw in the check. He blocks, then you do this check. If he blocks, you're just going to take. If he blocks with anything, you're just going to take it, and so he is going to have to come back. We're going to take it, and this is the point. This is checkmate. Whereas if he blocks again, knight here is checkmate. Okay. So yeah. So the point is, first block up the king. First block up the king's escape route, as it were. Don't want the king getting to g1, and then throw in that check. And just let's see if that's at g2. It wants first bishop at g2, then king e1, then rook takes. Because then we don't have a smother. Ah, yeah, I just didn't realize that. By going at g2, now when he does queen here, there's no smothered mate on g2, but by doing that, he's lost a lot of material. So we can throw this in, deflect the defender, and take the queen. So that's why it was a deflect the defender mate. So just going right from the beginning again, it's blocking the king, takes, takes, takes. You have to take everything, and you get in the end. But so it's the knight f4 is actually stronger than the discovered checkmate. So a little bit complicated, that one. And lastly, the most complicated, there is one that happened very recently. It was the candidates match between Opperweisen and Little Plotkin. Distract the defender. Opperweisen against Little Plotkin. And it was white to play. Ended off. Good, good, good. Okay, so Opperweisen had two knights and a pawn in hand and played checkmate. It's not checkmate because the queen can take it. So he tried again. Check. And the king escapes. And then he queens. So then the king could go to here or here. Yeah, so, and as what happened in the game was king here, which is very nice. If the king ever goes here, then, oh, then we win the queen with check. I mean, that's crazy, right? I mean, there might be something else, but okay, let's just see. Bishop takes queen. Okay, so it's a bit tedious, and you're going to get a mate eventually. If king d7, queen at e6. Okay, so queen e6 check is the problem. Okay, so bishop f8, queen. I mean, this is just going to be quite a long, tedious thing, as you basically just take all white's pieces. So that wasn't very exciting. So what was much more interesting was what happened in the, because you're winning the queen with check. It's all very easy. What was much more interesting was what happened in the game, which was king comes up, and then we form one of these knight boxes with the knight. So that's guarding off all those squares. So the king either has to come here or you have to take it. But the thing is, if you take it, then, and that's what happened in the game, then you go here. And remember, the queen is cutting off the king here, and the knight is cutting off this square. And the queen is also cutting off here, the sort of whole wedge. So king goes here, and queen there is checkmate, stopping the kings running back. And if you don't take it, and if you go king here directly, that's also checkmate. Yeah, there's nowhere to run. So we said no, rook at g1, king g1 maybe. I think that was maybe a previous one. Yeah. So yeah, a nice example from Opper of deflecting the defender. The defender in this case being the queen, which is doing a great job of protecting this king from all kinds of threats, also protecting the promotion square, and suddenly, oops, it all goes pear-shaped. But yeah, maybe king e8 actually results in a longer mate, surprisingly. But it's a bit tedious. Like, you're obviously going to win with so much material in hand. So yeah, a very pretty mate, and that actually just happened just a day or two ago. So we've seen lots of distract the defender, and now we're going to see just one example of remove the defender. And this is from a game of Kyle Legion against Swift Devil. Very pretty move he found. So it's not necessarily mating immediately, although, yeah, it is mating immediately. And the move is queen takes knight, because the knight was the piece stopping queen at h8 checkmate. Queen takes knight. And the point is, if you can't take with this pawn, because queen at h8 is still going to be checkmate. You could take with this pawn, maybe. But it doesn't work, because you just picked up a knight, and a knight is just the piece you need to checkmate with. And the only other thing you could try doing is this. It's a nice try, but then white would have queen at h8, so that bishop takes with check, king here, knight here, checkmate. And if knight takes, queen takes knight. So yeah, really pretty. Queen takes g6, take the knight, which is defending everything, and you get checkmate. Knight here also works. Yeah. Okay, so we're done with a lot of the stuff. We've seen distract the defender, deflect the defender, and we're now going to look at a new concept, which I call the magnet mate. And this is one where you just try and shift the opponent king a little bit to a checking square. And this is a game between Fumatox and Chicken Crossroad. This is a really important concept because beginning players often miss these magnet mates, even though they're not that difficult, because they are giving away material for free. So they're good ones to know, although you have to make sure you calculate it correctly, because you don't want to just give away material for free. So you have to be sure that, yeah, and this, I could have actually given an example of this from my own game, because this happened in my own game against Le Professionnel. Exact same mate. So this proves, this mate came up at least twice in the games I looked at. It's a really important mate. And the mate is this. The king is safe on the light squares. So what you do is you use the rook as a magnet to force the king onto a dark square, and then put a pawn or a bishop and deliver checkmate. So really simple concept, really, really important. So Chicken delivering mate against Fumatox. Next, variance only against Schwanet. So we're going to have another magnet mate. It's only against Schwanet, and it's white to play. Okay, so really just gonna, so yeah, this is going to be a little bit more complicated. Yeah, this is not so easy. But again, we want to, so a bishop on, if we have a pawn on f7, that's often a really nice piece to have, because then that can support a rook on g8 and it can promote. A bishop is actually a really nasty piece to have on f7. Our own king is a little bit precarious. But there's a forcing sequence. Knight here takes, and then we want to push the king onto a light square. Takes, takes. Now, if the king goes back, we could just go pawn here. If king here, queen here, checkmate. King here, queen here, rook takes, and then promote, checkmate. So he can't just go up either, because queen here will be checkmate. He can't run up. So he basically has to take. So although the dark squares are covered by this bishop, the light squares are not, and we still have got 4 pawns, 2 bishops, and a queen in hand. So I think we can just keep going, maybe with the bishop. And again, if he just steps back, queen here is checkmate. If he steps back here, we could just drop another bishop here, and then, you know, queen here, and then queen here is checkmate. The light squares are just really badly defended. So he basically has to take that bishop as well. And then we can do what we've seen before. Use a queen to cut off that king. So I think this is probably going to work. He could defend like so. But then we can, yeah, draw him up a little bit further. Maybe with a pawn, we don't even need a bishop. Just a pawn would be good enough. Draw him up. And maybe queen here is then checkmate. Because queen cuts the king off. So I think that's correct. So let's just engine check that line to make sure we didn't misunderstand. So bishop takes g6 is good. King takes g6. Bishop at f5 is indeed the fastest. And we saw if he runs back, we actually saw that line, he's in trouble. But yeah, bishop at e6 is actually a nice way of doing it. If he runs here, queen, I was thinking queen here, yeah, queen here, and then queen here, checkmate. So if he runs forwards, we seal him in, and then this works very nicely. Oh, that's another way of doing it. Bringing that queen in. I didn't see that. I was trying to go queen f, queen. What was my way of doing it? Ah, my way was wrong. I was going queen e3, but the king can run back. Okay, that's disappointing. Okay, that's so it's actually bringing this queen in. So notice again, this is the power position. 2 pieces, 3 apart, controlling this whole square, and in the case of queens, controlling in fact a larger square. I mean, controlling the 3 sides of the perimeter of this small square. So yeah, very nice. One more example of the magnet mate. That was actually quite a quick, tricky example, but we got another one which we can share as well. And this was in the round 3 bullet CWC match between Burpcow and Clearcast. Sorry, round 2 match between Burpcow and Clearcast. So Clearcast won this one, knocking Burpcow out in round 2. So it's another example of the magnet mate. So we're going to just try and deflect that king. And I got it the wrong way around because it's black to play. So it was and I left the engine on, which I shouldn't have done. Yeah, this is actually very classical. It's the bishop at h1 idea. The point being that if you take it, this is checkmate. The Arabian mate, knight and rook. If you run here, then just a pawn here is checkmate. If you run up, which is your other possibility, then rook here is in fact checkmate straight away. So what happened in the game was just, yeah. So this is actually a very classical mate, a lot simpler than the last one, so I'm going to put it a little bit earlier. Okay, now the next one is going to be from the game between Jan Lee and the Lazy MD, and we're getting a little bit more difficult with our concepts. The next concept is going to be that pawns are the catalysts for attack. And it was a game I'm sure Jan Lee won, but actually he didn't play the sharpest move in the position. This is not a mating study. This is more just a positional study. So we're actually, we're entering more subtle themes. Now, in this position, possibly a mouse slip, or maybe to be defensive, Jan Lee played pawn at h6. But he only has 1 pawn in hand. If you had plenty of pawns in hand, pawn at h6 would be a very decent move. He only has 1 pawn in hand, and pawns are the catalyst for attack. So pawn here, defended by the bishop, is much more powerful. Rook can't go here because knight g3 comes. and picks up the rook and so on. So this is already a very uncomfortable position. I mean, if rook g2, let's see what would black play here. Knight g3 comes anyway. Knight g3, and black would probably sack his rook. And this is now really precarious because the rook could come to f2, it could come to g1. It's a very bad position for white. Completely losing. And this pawn at h2 is just a thorn in white's camp. So it's kind of a more subtle concept. Okay, we're going to do something completely different now, which is creating an entry square. Oops. Creating an entry square. And this is from Schwanet against Variants Only, who had a... And it was black to play. And he did indeed find it. It's knight at h3. You create an entry square on f3. And this is now... Well, look, if you don't take this knight, you're in real trouble. If you step back, you're just getting mated straight away. That's mating 1. If you step back here and here, it's more obvious queen f2 is mate. If you step forwards, then queen f2 still looks very strong. King takes bishop is then your only move, and then rook here, and that's checkmate. So yeah, you have to take that knight, but now the queen comes here. Okay. And the king better go there, because if the king goes here, we have just mating 1. Look at g2. So the king goes here. And then we have this, winning a knight, and we come back. But because we have a knight, it's not checkmate. So I was thinking knight at g2, if he goes back. So again, if he goes here, so I think he can just go back. If he goes here, then we have a pawn and a knight. Is that enough? Yes. Pawn and knight's enough because we can just do this and win the rook. And if he takes this, yeah. He can block or do anything he likes, but if he blocks, we're just taking it. And if he takes, we have a rook in hand, which is just going to be enough, basically. Whichever way he goes, the rook is going to checkmate. So that I'm not sure if that was the shortest mate, but that's definitely mating. So what if he goes this way? We can still take the rook. Is there something neater? So I was thinking knight here and queen takes pawn is another idea, but the king runs here. So I'm not sure. I'm trying to think. Queen takes knight, king here. Are there any other knight checks? Queen here, king here. So I could go queen takes rook. What I'm worried about is the king escaping. So that won't do. And I can't do a knight there because bishop covers. So I'm very tempted by this, but I don't see the finish. So I'm gonna check out the engine. I'm gonna cheat. Pawn at f2. King d2. Wow. Okay. Knight at b1 I missed. Yeah, so that's the way of stopping the king escaping. You have this resource of the knight on b1. Completely missed that. Yeah, that's really nice. So just to check, that was the fastest. King f2, queen f3, king e1, at f2. Yeah, so not knight at g2. Delete from here. At f2, and this knight, okay, that was very beautiful. So you eventually force the king this way, and then we've got queen takes rook, king takes. Oh, and rook at g2 is checkmate. Okay, I didn't see that in the other line. When the king ran this way at f2, king f1, queen takes h1, king takes f2. If he goes king takes f2, I had some other line going like this, but actually rook at g2 is much better. Okay, so I don't need the queen f3 business. Okay, I'm getting really tired, but I've only got a few more left to finish the study, so I'm going to try and plow on. Okay, the next theme is combining defense and attack. And this is a really, really nice theme. Often it's bishops which are best at this, although as we see here, not only, as you'll see in these examples. This was white to play. And I need to turn the engine off quickly. Yeah, this is going to be some tricky stuff. So white to play. So what Verenzoni in fact played in this game, really lovely move, was queen here, defending his bishop, but also threatening queen takes pawn, checkmate. And Schwanat tried to interfere with the defense of the bishop, and he missed that there was an attacking intention of queen at h6. So it was a nifty little trick from Verenzoni in that game. Let's look at the next example. Combining defense and attack. We've only got a few more left, so let's maybe a dozen more left maximum. So let's quickly, and they're going to get more interesting as well. Combining defense and attack. This is blitz bullet clear cast. And it was black to play. Good, got the engine off. So let's see. Yes, a really nice move he found. We're in check, but we're going to drop with the knight. And the idea is once we've got our king castled, which we're going to do next move, wow, we have a big threat on and a huge attack on the white king. So a really brilliant move found in that game by Clearcast as black. Really good example of combining defense and attack. Let's look at the next one. This is a game between Upper Wazen and John Stuckey. Combining defense and attack. And it was black to play. Okay, let's see. What do we do here? So the thing I notice here is bishop takes knight. Yes, this is very important. And actually John Stuckey didn't play the right move here. So we're getting into more complicated examples. So black is actually doing very nicely here. Lots of pieces in hand. But white does have one threat. Bishop takes knight, pawn takes, and drop a knight with check here. And this square is not covered. So this knight check is covered, but this square is not covered after bishop takes knight, pawn takes. So the move, so this is a very nice move. This is also decent, blocking. And both these moves, black is completely fine and doing very well. But this was an especially nice move because it combines defense and attack. So after bishop takes knight, pawn takes, and white doesn't have a huge attack. If knight at d5, just take it. Takes. And then it suggests knight at d4 is a possible idea, queen at e5 is a possible idea, knight at f4, rook takes g2 even. the black king is actually quite safe. So yeah, black is apparently completely winning here with 3 knights, a bishop, a rook, and a queen in hand. It's probably quite a good idea to see what actually did happen in the game, which was knight at h4 instead of knight at f4. This is quite stunning. Takes, takes. And the reason he takes with the king is because if you take with the pawn, that it really doesn't look very pretty either. King f8, bishop at e7, king here, knight takes pawn, king takes bishop. He's winning the rook with check. King f8, pawn at e7, maybe king g7 to try and avoid the pawn queening with check. Queen coming across here. Maybe you can block. Pawn at h6. Okay, if we take the knight, we're getting he's queening with check. So maybe we go up to g6. If we go back to h8, this queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn check, and pawn at g7 was going to be mating us. So king g6 only move. Rook at g7. King h5. So this is an example that was really it's going to be tough. Bishop e2. Okay, so white's got a huge attack. Is the point of this? What was the other alternative? So he actually played king takes bishop. Okay, so what happened is knight at d5, stopping the king running back. Yeah, so Risa is asking, was bishop at f6 so dangerous? And we're showing why, because this is what happened in the game. King e6, and the queen invades. Look, white looks as if he's got utterly no material. It's not dangerous at all, right? And then this is what happens in the game. Oppa does takes, and he recognizes pawn takes is looking really nasty. So he takes with the king, and the problem with that is now the king can't run back, and the queen invades. So we can see how the game continued. f5 takes, and this is really well defended. So if you take, queen takes back. So you have to try and run with the king, but now queen e4 here, and now there was in fact a mate in 1 with bishop d4 because these bishops cover all the diagonals, but instead Oppa went for the queen mate. He went for queen here check and queen here checkmate. So that's how the game ended. So that does answer your question. Was bishop f6 dangerous? It's like, wow, it really was. After g takes f6, yeah. So after g takes f6, you keep the king in the box. If you try to run to d8, you've got maybe knight takes f6 check straight away. If you go to a dark square, if he goes to a dark square, you put a pawn on. If he goes to a dark square, you put a pawn, or it says a bishop at even on e7 to try and deflect it, and then you take the rook with check. If you try and dodge that, that's not a good idea. Oh, the beauty of the bishop is it defends the knight. Yeah, that is amazing. That doesn't work either. So in this sort of position, you basically have to take the bishop, and then you're losing the rook with check, and now there's going to be a pawn landing on this. And if you go to that's if you go to a light square. If you go to a dark, if you go to a dark square, then you have this happening. Yeah, and we have what we saw earlier. The queen just whoop, on the long diagonal. You can try and block it, and then I said you can't run back here because otherwise queen takes pawn, and pawn at g7 is mate, so you have to run up. So okay, it's not quite mate, but only because the computer doesn't see deep enough. So yeah, it's suggesting bishop g4, knight at f6 check, king takes. Okay, rook takes g4. Point is white is completely safe, and mate is coming very soon. But some kind of variation. Yeah, there's a huge attack on basically, and black is busted. All those pieces are just completely useless. Because what? Yeah, amazing, really amazing. And so knight here really, because now you take the knight, and now the entry squares, the knight entry squares are taken, and the king is actually incredibly safe. Ooh, there is this knight check though. So I'd be worried about knight here check, but maybe knight here check's not so dangerous. So if here I did knight here and he does knight at c6 check, apparently it's not dangerous at all. I just step back, And yeah, I guess it's all about f6. f6 is not a problem, so yeah, d7 we just take it, so not a problem at all. Yeah, and in the meantime I'm crashing through on g2, and look at all those pieces in hand, and you've only got a pawn and a bishop. What a difference! What a difference! Yeah. So that's the end of combining defense and attack. Really beautiful example. We will see more examples of some of these themes. I'm going to show you just 3 quick games once we're finished. But we're going to just quickly finish with these. And the next one is piece hunting bug style. It's a really important theme. You try and think, what piece do I need to mate my opponent? And you go and get it. And this was white to play. And it was a game between Antic and Blitz Bullet. Just remember, I'm actually working tomorrow. But okay, we'll be fine. And I should turn this off. Okay, so what is the piece? This is a really nice idea Antic had. So Antic's idea is, I want to put a rook at h8, and it would be mate, but he can take it. And I take back, but then I get a knight in hand, and he can take it. And a knight's really useful, because if we've got a pawn on g7, king goes back, knight at h6 is checkmate. So all I need for mate is that pawn for g7. This pawn. So lots of ways of trying to get that pawn. The one he tried in the game was queen takes pawn here. Queen takes bishop would also be good. Even taking on c3 I assume would be good. Let's just see. No. Okay, this is stunning. So taking on c3 is not good, because this bishop and this pawn are not just pawns we want to attack with, they are also mating us, which I just wasn't paying attention to. F takes g2, king takes, knight here, you could take off that knight, but it's coming back at you. And the king is in a mating net. So, okay, wow, that was something I hadn't quite grasped. So, Antic against Blitz Bullet, the bishop and the pawn are not just pieces we want for our attack, they are also pieces about to mate us. So, okay, he took the pawn, which actually clears away any threat of mate. Blitz Bullet took back, and he delivered the mate, which I just mentioned. Rook in the corner, takes, takes, king takes. We use that pawn for g7, and we checkmate. And so you could ask yourself, well, what could black have done in this position? Like, so it's kind of difficult. Because you can't go bishop at h6, because just knight takes. What if knight at e6? So what would you play then? Knight h6 check, king takes, take that knight. So we're threatening. Sort of knight here, and well, let's see. So if I just go queen takes bishop, what's the threat? Knight f5 check is the threat, because if king here, rook here, checkmate. Okay. So suppose I go pawn takes knight, does that help a little to defend f5? Not really, because then we get coming on h5. And if we step back, pawn here is checkmate. If we step here, then why can't we step to f8? Ah, because queen takes f6. And then pawn here is checkmate. And if he goes here, you just take it. And that's checkmate. So wow. And he can't take that knight. It's also the bishop's defending the knight. So yeah, he has to step back. That's really nice. So, really nice move found by Antic. Bishop takes f3. And that's how the game finished. With using that pawn to mate. Okay, still half a dozen puzzles left. And the rest of them, in fact, all the rest of the puzzles I want to share are going to be about defending correctly. So we're going to have to use all our knowledge about mates that we've picked up to see what mates our opponent might have and defend against it. So this was a game between Swift Devil and Kyle Legion, and I think he did not defend correctly. Let's see. Yeah, this is very pretty. So what happened in the game? So So Kyle has just checked on f3. It's very natural to block with the pawn. And I should turn this engine off. Takes, takes. This is a very pretty pattern. The knight covers the dark squares. This knight covers the light squares. So the king is in the mating net. Oh yeah, good night, Rusai. I know this has gone on far too long. Bye-bye. Catch you later. King goes back and pawn here is checkmate. So the mistake from Swift Devil was to defend with the pawn, because that's exactly what Kyle Legion needed to mate with. And defending with the bishop would be no good, but if you defend with the knight, yeah, black is actually completely fine here. Black is in fact completely winning. Sorry, black is completely winning anyway, sorry. But there's no mate, is what I'm trying to say. So defending with the knight is much better. So pretty, I mean, yeah. Maybe it makes no difference in that sense, so that this puzzle is not so, but it's just something, there's a very pretty mate with the pawn. If you defend with the knight, black really has to work hard to finish off the game. And in bullet especially, that matters. So the next one is going to be, yeah, a really nice, a really beautiful example of king dodging. Really, yeah, this is a real good one. So correct defense. So normally we like to take material. So king dodging is saying we don't always take the material offered to us because it may be poisoned. So yeah, chicken crossroad was checked by this pawn on h7, and he dodged. And it's quite interesting because if he'd taken, okay, two knights and a queen. So what's the finish? So there isn't, in fact, a mate here for white. So I'm tempted by pawn takes pawn, that's one possibility. Is there anything else? I think just pawn takes pawn is good. I'm pretty sure pawn takes pawn is just good. Yeah, pawn takes pawn. Okay, what I didn't see is that queen h5 is just mate straight away, defended by the bishop. Yeah, that's so swallowtail mate. Or is it dovetail mate? But yeah. Yeah, that's really impressive. And the point is, if you step back, then queen h7 is checkmate. So if you step up, queen h5 is checkmate. So really wise to step aside. And then in this position, white played, so in fact Fumitox played this, and chicken crossroad so let's see, is there anything? Yeah. So chicken crossroad in this position played knight takes bishop, knight takes knight, rook takes bishop. And that was also not correct defense, because it turns out Fumitox again had a checkmate. So let's just look what it was. Queen to g8 takes intermezzo. That's what this is all about. It's not really correct defense. This is about intermezzo. Knight to f7 takes, pawn takes pawn. The king can't go here or here because of the knight, so it has to go and take the pawn. But now bishop here, king has to come back, and pawn here is checkmate. So we actually sacrifice the queen. We sacrifice the queen to get this amazing mate. That would have been stunning. But Fumitox didn't spot that mate, and I think Chicken Crossroad went on to win. Yeah, Chicken Crossroad. I think, yeah, Chicken Crossroad went on to win the game, because I think he was more focused on defending, yeah, knight takes f1, rook takes d1, and the mate doesn't exist anymore. Why doesn't the mate exist anymore? So maybe I'm just sleepy. Rook takes g1. Ah, yes, the bishop is the key. Yeah, of course. So the bishop is the key to this whole mate working. So the moment black removes that bishop is actually a huge attacking piece. Okay, so correct defense. Here it was to dodge. And here also, that's not the correct defense. The correct defense is to reinforce your position. And I think that's the point of the next position. It's the same position. Correct defense, home touching crossroad. This position, the correct defense is to not knight takes bishop, but to reinforce g6. And now black is doing fine. So if f takes g6, bishop takes g6, and so on. So there, no, queen at g8 doesn't lead to any nasty ideas. So the first was king dodging, and the second is reinforcement. And we've just got 2 more puzzles left, and then we've got some games I just wanted to share. So it's correct defense. Next one will be about taking. And it's from Opperweisen Stasviel. From black's perspective. So what happened in the game is, I think he took with the queen. And the problem with taking with the queen is then the bishop's still alive. Blocks with the queen, but he still gets that. Yeah. And that's checkmate. I think that's right. So bishop takes d6, checkmate. Yeah. And that's in fact what happened in the game. But something very amazing is that if you take with the queen, sorry, if you take with the pawn, rather, so I'm going to promote that variation, takes, 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 the bishop actually provides cover of the king. So although you might have knight here check or pawn here check, if white goes pawn here check, crucially you don't step here, otherwise queen d6 will be checkmate, but you step down and the bishop covers here. If knight here check, you don't go here because otherwise queen here will be checkmate, but you step up, threaten to take this knight, and yeah, if you were to just do this, just king takes b5 is completely fine. Oh, king can't, queen can't go to d6 in the first place because the bishop's covering. Yeah. So yeah. So the point. So just to say it again, if this we step up, and if pawn here, we step down. And either way, the bishop provides coverage. So really interesting example. Okay, and the final puzzle for the day, not just the final thing in the stream, but the final puzzle for the day, in fact the 60th puzzle, wow, is a game between Jan Lee and the Lazy MD. And it was in their round 2 match in the Crazyhouse World Championship. And Jan Lee had won the first 5 games in the match, so was probably hoping to keep winning, to keep up the pressure. So he turned down a draw. But the draw is a correct thing to do. Because so the draw is king d1, knight here, check. You never want to go king here, or it's rook here's checkmate. So you step up, knight here, check, king d1, and so on. Knight here, check. Okay. But instead of stepping back to d1, recognizing that this would lead to a draw, he stepped to c1. And that's a mistake. Maybe a blunder even. So why is it a blunder? Yeah. Let's see if we can calculate it. Or if anyone in chat can calculate it. Pawn at d7 is interesting. It's interesting for the following reason. If this bishop takes, we have rook here, check, king takes rook, double checkmate. That's going to be a thematic idea. If this bishop takes, queen takes bishop, and okay, knight takes queen would be obvious, but what if you were to go king here? Then we don't have enough knights in hand. Okay, so go queen takes bishop. If knight takes, then we'd simply have rook here, check. Yeah, knight here, checkmate. So he wouldn't take, he'd rather block. But then we have knight here, check. Knight takes knight. Oh, that doesn't work. No, then we have queen takes knight, rather. So I might be going off, but the point is if knight takes, we have knight here, check, knight takes knight, knight takes knight. And if king takes, we have probably this. So I'm worried about it running up. Do we want to do bishop here, check? So I seem to have done something wrong. So bishop takes pawn, queen takes. I'm going to have a look. What's wrong here? If bishop takes pawn, rook at d1. So it's nothing to do with queen takes. Rook at d1, king takes, and then queen takes. So obviously knight takes is forced then, because if bishop takes, we have this discovered check which we saw. So knight takes is forced then. Yeah, but then everything's easy. So knight here, check, king here, rook takes bishop. Yeah. And so everything's very easy. Okay. So this is the thematic idea. You have to get the move order right, but the thematic idea is rook at d1. Okay, so going back to the beginning again. So if king c1, it's a mistake. You go here. If he takes like this, we have checkmate. That's easy. If he takes like this, so we'll promote that variation. We have rook at d1 takes here, and checkmate. And if he takes the bishop, it's just the standard double checkmate. And so what that leaves is taking with the knight, or not taking at all. So taking with the knight, we've got a rook in hand. I think we still do the thematic this, check, and rook takes bishop, and we're going to take this. So taking with the knight's no good either, because the knight was defending e1, and now it isn't. So there's only one other move. No, there are a couple of other moves. But if he does this, we've got this. Giving us I think that's right. If he does this, yeah, King D1 is interesting. That's okay. Don't need to promote. So promote to queen. So apparently knight takes is the most troublesome, because if bishop takes, we have knight e3 and just a simple drop a rook. So takes with knight is the most challenging, but then we have knight e3, and then if king c1, we just have rook d1, so he has to go here. And yeah, this is now a little bit challenging. You go knight c4, d takes c4, bishop at e3. If he ever steps down, we're just going takes. This is just takes and it's mate. So he has to step up, and then we have a double check mate. Double check, I meant double take mate, like so. Oh, so really complicated. But maybe that wasn't the most efficient. So just going back to the beginning again. At d2 is correct. The move that was slightly concerning me is king d1. Oh yeah, we haven't dealt with the case king to b1, but that's then quite easy to deal with. We just go rook at d1 check, knight at c1, takes, and use that knight to smother mate. And he only has knights to block with, so you take the knight and you smother mate. So that's very pretty. Whew. So the only kind of slightly tricky case is king to d1. But then surely isn't there a shorter mate? And it's not seeing anything shorter. Because interestingly, it's saying mate in 6 here. Knight takes e1, knight e3. Yeah, so knight e3. So the move from here, d takes e1 equals queen. Knight e3, knight c4. Okay, and this is the mate we were discussing. Okay, so that was definitely the most complicated example of the day, and it's getting extremely late. But before we finish, I just want to look at 3 very nice games. And the first of them is this one between Chicken Crossroad and Fumitox. And we're just going to add that to the study. Okay, so just going to, what was interesting about this game? Let's have a look. So we're going to flip the board, because it was in particular Chicken Crossroads playing this game, which was so impressive. Now maybe rook takes knight's a good idea in this position, and then things are okay. But what happened here is the d file gets opened up. If the king just tries to run, then Bishop takes bishop is coming, and that's rather nasty. So he takes the knight, takes with check, blocks. So by doing this, he's protecting his bishop. And now we have, it's this sequence that I think is the most interesting. So bishops are both defend. So the theme here is combining defense and attack. So there, white will have threats here, but so he's combining the check with an attack on the rook. So bishop's a very good piece to return the attack. So he gives up his knight and takes the rook. Now this knight is creating threats, especially on c7. But he has a pin on this pawn, and we're going to see how Chicken Cross would really utilize that pin. First, he threatens to remove that knight. So if you play a move like knight here, he's just going to take this knight. So Fumitox moves back, so the queen is protecting the knight in a way, although you're giving up the queen. Now knight f2, and he's using now the pin a second time. Okay, pawn promotes, and at this point he gives up the queen for the rook, and the rook checkmates on the back rank. So I think it's a really exploiting a pin and exploiting open files. I mean, it was a very beautiful game from Chicken. So he takes this one, takes the rook, combining defense and attack. I think so. This is the thematic move: rook at d4, combining defense and attack. And yeah, very pretty game. The second game I want to look at is between Master Tan and Retarded Platypus, and again it's about exploiting pins, but also I opened up the fen rather than okay. So Master Tan was white. Yeah, this was quite an incredible game as well. So let's have a play through it. So it's e4, a very unusual move, bishop b5. So just playing outside book a little bit. In normal chess, it's played more often, obviously, the way it is, but less so in Crazyhouse. And Stockfish is not keen on it. But Stockfish is very keen on everything else that Master Tan did in this game. So he check and picks up this pawn, hitting the queen. So really good attack that white's built up. So he sacks. Now knight takes pawn would be very natural here, but instead he goes. So 2 pieces for a piece is perfectly reasonable. But instead he goes straight in for the attack, which is a beautiful idea. Takes, attacking the queen and the bishop. Ooh. Okay, so it's just a straight swap, but a bishop's a nasty piece. So he does this. Okay, so he's got a crushing looking position, check. You also have to watch out for if a knight can take, bishop takes f7 and then knight takes with check. So this is a different case. King on d7, knight takes with check, with the queen then picking up this bishop and coming into an attack. Okay, so white's got quite a crushing position, but the way he converted it was just very beautiful. And it's this position here that I wanted to highlight. White has 2 pins of pawns on the king, and a very beautiful move he plays. Oh, okay. He checks first, and then pawn at d5, hitting both those pins. Steps aside, takes this pawn. Okay, now he's going to break through 1. He wants a knight. In fact, he really wants a knight. He wants a knight so much he's even happy to give up his queen for that knight. Now, this is another very important point. This knight is poisoned. In a beginners of Crazyhouse, when they see knights come and take their g2 pawn or something, might be tempted to take it back. Just to show, like, white has mate in 8 here. If white took that knight, black has mate in 2. Check, and check, and checkmate. Or if you step up, king g3, queen at g4 is checkmate. So this knight is very serious. Okay, so he takes the bishop. Okay, now there are lots of threats here. As queen takes bishop, there are threats of knight somewhere, knight here, check. Okay, but what he does, again, he's exploiting the pin. Bishop there, and that's checkmate. So this is a very nice move. Bishop here, exploiting the pin on this bishop, and that's a checkmate. The bishop controls all the dark squares around the king. So I thought it was a very nice game. And the last game I wanted to look at, probably the most complicated of the three, just wanted to add. So this one I was going to just add it to the study. The last one I wanted to add to the study is Opperweisen against John Stuckey. And the theme in particular in this one is breaking into the opponent's position. Yeah, and Opper did it in a very creative way in this game. Okay. So just maneuvering. That knight was dangerous because it was threatening pawn at h3. So yeah, although it's okay, so their g2 ideas. So that's a good defensive move, hitting the collecting the only pawn that's threatening to invade. If the knight's ever lost, knight e3 would be an idea, and so on. So he traps the bishop. That's good. Well, it's not trapped at all. It's just a swap. But it gets the queen out, which allows you to hit the queen with tempo. Queen goes back, and he pushes. Okay, now in this position, it looks as if John Stuckey has done quite a good job of making everything quite safe. Okay, so very nice move hitting these dark squares again. Even though they've been really strengthened with at e7, he's still going to hit them again. He's still a little bit concerned, so he puts his bishop on d6, playing very solid. So Opper takes the bishop, and here's the point, the most interesting point in the game, where Opper plays at g6. And the most interesting response would be, well, what would happen if f takes g6? Obviously the most dangerous looking move. Bishop at f7. If you're to take it, you can go knight e to g5, check. So the knight's defended. So obviously this would be foolish because you can go knight takes pawn double check here and pawn here checkmate. So that would be clearly wrong. But why can't you go, say, back to e8? Because then we have bishop to f7 check, king to f8, and then this check, and now the rook is suddenly defending the bishop. Bishop takes knight, and knight takes bishop. So this is why that f7 square is incredibly dangerous. Well, there's still this move, but then apparently there's queen d4 check. You could try and block, but there's a mate. Oh yeah, double check, mate. So this is a double check. The king would have to move, but these two knights cover these 4 squares. So that's why you can't take with the f pawn. Fair enough. Not surprising. So you take with the h pawn, because you don't want an attack on f7. So Opper takes back with the knight, and he's threatening pawn at h7. So probably the best defense is knight f6 apparently, and rook takes knight might come. But John Stuckey played pawn at h7, which also looks very reasonable. And here, very nice move by Opera again. Queen takes d6. And of course the idea is if pawn takes, knight takes pawn, we will again see these two knights covering off all these squares. So queen takes pawn, okay. He says, like, I can't take you, so I'm going to attack you, chase you back. Okay, so we see again this kind of position where the knight is next to the king. And I just want to emphasize, never take that knight next to the king, almost never. Indeed, in here it would be mating, bishop at d6, takes, rook takes pawn, you sack your rook, because you're getting knight hg5 and the queen is coming in as checkmate. So queen here, king here, knight takes pawn check, creates a clearance. If the king moves, this other knight's coming in as checkmate. But if you take it, then we got a back rank like this. King to c8, knight takes d6. Check. Actually, don't even take the rook. Just knight takes d6 is checkmate. So that's why. And if you don't take that rook, if you try to run away, say to d8, that doesn't work either because of this. Queen takes d7 check, king b6, and queen takes a7 is checkmate because the bishop and the queen cover off all the escape squares. So yeah, quite interesting. King takes knight falls to bishop at d6. Bishop at d6 just to seal it off. Why not rook takes f7 immediately? So rook takes f7 immediately also works. But bishop at d6 is slightly stronger. It gives you a pawn to take back there. Okay, so you obviously, so what happened in the game is obviously John Stuckey doesn't take back that knight, so he just plays a queen here so that the knight can't come out. Well, already the knight can't come out because the pawn is defending. So he's just reinforcing all the squares around his king. Seems to be very good play from black as well here, until this move, and he resigned. So what's the problem? Why can't he, say, take this one? The problem is this knight's taking the rook. And if the rook moves, then this pawn is invading in on g7, and the back rank is too weak. Yeah, so for example here, just knight takes rook is just a huge problem, because now this is a mate threat. And it's difficult to see what to do. If you go, say, knight g6, okay, but the problem is now he's got this all defended. King to d8, pawn to e7, this is a kind of problem. King to c8, bishop to a6, blocking him off, b7, and rook at d8 checkmate. So, yeah, really nasty position to play. White's king is completely safe, and yeah, what a sequence of moves with at g6, and then queen takes d6. Then exchanging queens, and White has a crushing attack, and John Stuckey resigned. So that was 3 nice games. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed these instructive positions from the Crazyhouse World Championship, and these 3 highlight games that we've shown you. I know it's been a long stream, so thanks everyone who did stick with it. Hope it's been instructive, and thank you for watching.